from police families and the public. Meanwhile, Safeguarding Minister Natalie Fleet has quit after just over 2 months, explaining that the job was overwhelmingly triggering and making her ill. Honest, if not exactly a ringing endorsement of the brief. On the brighter side, households can look forward to that less than £1 a week saving once VAT is scrapped from electricity bills in October. Paid for, conveniently, by binning the digital ID scheme. Same revolving door politics, slightly different northern accent. And the nation waits to see whether this government lasts longer than the average Premier League manager's honeymoon. Laters, Tigers.
Welcome back to the Mike Graham Show. Listen, we've got lots going on. We've got plenty of people to talk to, and we've got a few more clips to play you as well over the course of the next hour or so. Sonia Elijah's going to be here. She's written a new book, and Ben Habib's going to be here too. Gruel is great, says Aaron Dorr. A slab of that twice a day and you'll struggle to eat anything else. Bring back gruel. Make it with water, leave it to hydrate for a week. No energy required. Yummy.
What is gruel?
Well, you see, I always thought gruel was just one of those words that people said, you know, like in Victorian times. You'd go to the workhouse and they'd give you gruel to eat. I didn't know it was actually a thing. I just assumed it was something horrible that it was a sort of adjacent to porridge in some way, shape or form. I mean, I love porridge. Porridge is great. I mean, you can buy porridge very cheaply. Caroline sent us a super chat. Thank you very much for that. In Wales. Yeah, I don't know. I'll maybe have to look it up. This one from Wendy. Great show again. Well done, team. We know what William has been doing. Do you? Well, I wish you'd tell us. I wish he'd tell us, actually. But he's all right. For those of you who are worried about Big Willie, William Yarwood from the Taxpayers Alliance, he is, in fact, we have tracked him down. Jane says, can you please give your producer a microphone? No, it's not how we do it. No, the idea is we like the disembodied voice, which is slightly in the background, and it doesn't need to have a microphone. That's why we do it that way. Aristotle says this, Mike and Claire, times are very hard, please respect. Listen, I'm not suggesting that times are not hard. All I'm saying is that if you think that buying processed food or any kind of, tinned product or packet product is actually cheaper than cooking with proper vegetables and proper, raw materials, if you like, in the food way, you'd be wrong because it's actually a lot cheaper to do it that way. So I'm actually giving you advice here. Thin gruel was in the workhouse, says Cheesecake. Thin gruel, thick gruel, I don't know. As kids, our gran would let us dip bread in hot bacon fat. Bloody delicious, says Swiss Tony. Yeah, it is very good for you. Well, in the olden days, they used to take the fat off the beef and spread it on. We were talking about this on, I should tell people actually about Lewis Schaefer and I doing the Thought Police podcast, which you can now get if you wish to get it every single week. We record it every Tuesday. And he's got a great idea about the way that food is prepared and the way that he now eats food. And he was saying that, fat is essentially quite good for you. He's not a nutritionist. He's not anybody that we should necessarily follow in terms of, advice. However, what he is a guy who says that, when people weren't as fat and when people did eat more healthily, they used to put things like dripping and fat on the bread. And they just take it out of the, and it was better than sunflower oil and all that. Hot bacon fat in the tomatoes, says Twiggy. Well, a bacon, lettuce and tomato sandwich is one of the great things, I have to say, that you could ever do, that you could ever get your hands on. Last one. I think Charlotte should get her own show on UK Live. Well, okay. Well, she'd have to find the time. Do you fancy your own show on UK Live?
I did one day when I've lost a bit of weight.
When you lost a bit of weight? Why do you need to lose weight to get over a show? I don't think that's important at all. Anyway, never mind. We've got plenty to do. Should we play? What's the thing? You know what? We'll play it when Ben Habib comes in, the Nigel Farage clip on Anne Widdecombe. But right now, we've got a guest. Sonia Elijah's here. Sonia, hi. Nice to see you.
Hi, Mike.
Welcome to the Mike Graham Show. Do you like it?
I love it.
Isn't
I love
it nice?
this space. It's very cosy.
Yeah. It's very, well, here's the man that made it, Pooch. He is the guy that created all of it.
Your camera.
Oh, thank you very much. He is our partner here, and basically he built all of this. We had an empty room, and he was like, so he kind of came up with the whole idea of the plants and the desks, and it's all rather cozy. We love it.
It's lovely, and it's nice and cool, air conditioned.
It is air conditioned as well. Yeah. Funnily enough, we all wanted to sleep here when it was really hot a couple of weeks ago. We were like, we're all just going to come here and fall asleep on the floor because it'll be a lot better than being at home. Anyway, listen, you're here because you've got a new book out, and there it is, 311. viral takeover. And 311, interestingly enough, because I was talking to Mike Fairclough earlier,
Yes.
who you know,
Yes.
who's got this new book sort of publishing company
Yes.
venture on the go, which I'm going to be a part of as well. And he was telling me that you might be joining it. He's not quite sure yet, but we hope so.
Possibly.
And I was reading about 311 because I've been writing something for him, which sort of takes us all back into the COVID era and back into the way the press dealt with it and the way the media dealt with it, which was really, quite sinister in many ways. But 311 represents the 11th of March, doesn't it?
Yes, so March the 11th, 2020, when the World Health Organization declared the pandemic, and our world essentially changed forever.
Yes, it did. And do you remember where you were? Is it one of those where you remember where you were? I remember, and you'll know probably better than me, whether it was the 20th of March when Boris Johnson gave that press conference to say, basically, I want you to go home and stay there for a month.
Yes.
Because I remember working that day, and I was working in those days at News and over in London Bridge, and I was I think we were due to film something, and we couldn't film it because the company had decided, right, well, we can't let the people that you want to film with into the building.
Right.
Because, they might have COVID. And they were like, right, okay. So we all went to a bar, which was shutting down like that afternoon. And I remember speaking to the young woman who was working behind the bar, who I think was Bulgarian or Lithuanian or something. And she was like, well, my college has just told me they're closing down and I'm not going to be able to work here, so I'm going to have to go home.
Yeah.
And it was the beginning of something that I don't think any of us at that moment really understood.
Yeah. Beginning of something quite sinister, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, I do remember early on, the fear on people's faces as you sort of, walked through the supermarkets and, the whole one-way system they had. It was just, the whole world went mad.
It was insane, wasn't it?
Yes.
Really?
Absolutely.
And did you think that from the beginning?
I knew something was not right. I knew this was not about a virus. This was about that they're using fear. They're absolutely using fear to their advantage. And what we saw really essentially was a viral takeover of our society, our fundamental rights, and the truth.
Yeah.
They hijacked the truth as well.
I think that was the thing that worried me the most in a way, because I kind of was very centrist, I suppose, at the start. And I remember walking home out of the pub when they closed it and going to get my car, drove home and thought, well, they want us to chill out for a month, probably be okay. I'd already said to my bosses that I wanted to come in to work every day because they offered us the chance to, record the shows from home and all of that. And I'm like, no, I'd really prefer to come into the office. And so I always did. But at the beginning, I thought, well, if this is what we need to do, let's just do that.
Yeah.
But I didn't stay like that for long.
Yeah, really, the book, I would say, it's 5 years of my investigative work, culmination of that. And what I do is, it's really evidence-based expose, dismantling all the lies they told us.
Right.
From the very beginning. And I look at, I expose a whole coordinated narrative that justified unprecedented lockdowns that we saw, that you were just describing, the flawed COVID testing protocols, the rushed through novel gene-based shots that they rushed through despite known safety risks. I really go into that as well. And the widespread censorship. So I really go into that, the censorship network at play. And the book has over 900 citations, Mike. Everything I write I go to primary source documents. It took me quite a few years to pull the book together. And I did it for the public, to have it on record. I don't see this book as a post-mortem. It's more a live indictment of events that are still unfolding, right?
Yes, and still kind of, practices which are being used by government, which were kind of invented, I suppose, then, which are still going on in other areas of our lives now. So tell us what you were doing on the 3rd of the 11th of March.
On the 11th of March, I probably was just doing some shopping. I probably was just, pushing a trolley around the market, But it was really, I remember clearly those Downing Street briefings, right? And It was, I would say, the whole lockdown was a psyop, a psychological operation to prepare people so they would be so desperate for their freedoms and they would take a novel experimental, injection just to be able to get on with their lives. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
So it was a major psychological operation. I mean, we know, and I go into this as well, the secretive Whitehall units, the sort of counter disinformation unit, rapid response unit. We had the 77th Brigade involved, and this is the suppressing of the truth. This is going after all the dissenting voices, right, who are speaking up against lockdowns, the novel shots, talking about the safety, the harms, and we saw, it was a coordinated censorship network at play, and we had the British military involved as well, right? Yeah. Going after and monitoring.
Were you working, because you were working at the BBC at one point as an investigative journalist.
Early on, very early on, as a researcher.
Right.
Yeah,
was that what you were doing in 2020 or not? Or was,
no. The BBC was way before. Before, yeah. Right. And then I started writing for, the Conservative Woman. That was, TCW Defending Freedom, and I started writing about lockdown. So those were my early articles.
Yeah.
I writing about school closures. I mean, really, I see lockdowns. It wasn't just a mistake, or we didn't know. We should, it was they absolutely. It was a power grab. They crushed people's mental health. They crushed children's education and small businesses.
Yeah. And they also put the country in such massive debt that we're now in a death spiral, effectively, financially, from which we will never recover. £500 billion, I think they spent.
Yes, yeah. And don't forget, now we have this COVID inquiry that's costing the public almost over £200 million. And it is just an illusion of accountability.
We haven't discovered much, have we?
It's an illusion. No, it's a complete whitewashing exercise, and it has no teeth. Because even in their remit, the inquiry, they are not able to make any findings of civil or criminal liability. So what is the point? It makes no sense. And
they're not actually looking into anything to do with the involvement of the children and the schools. No. They're not really taking any instructions on that at all, are they?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, it really is. I would just say it just is an illusion. And I really think the public were deceived, absolutely deceived with everything. I mean, from the lies that they told us, why we were locking down or protect, stay home. But did you know that hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money was spent on fear-mongering messaging? We all remember those, the messages, stay home, you'll kill grandma. Yeah. And it was a big behavioural experiment, because the book has a lot of exhibits, a lot of screenshots. So we have a early SAGE meeting. SAGE is the scientific advisory group for emergencies. Do you remember those unelected?
Full of communists, right?
Unelected, like Susan Mitchie, exactly. Unelected.
What's happened to her now?
She's now she heads up the behavioural advisory group for the World Health Organization.
Yeah, that's a funny thing.
And do you know Sir Jeremy Farrar, who was director of the Wellcome Trust at the time? Do you know how much money the Wellcome Trust made?
They made a fortune, didn't they?
They made a fortune. Yeah. I was on Russell Brand talking about that just recently on his show.
Yeah.
And he is now Chief Scientific Advisor for the World Health Organization. Do you know where Jonathan...
they all end up.
And do you know where Jonathan Van Tam is now? Who was our deputy medical officer.
Yeah.
Do you remember him? He is now working at Moderna.
Of course. And Chris Whitty, of course, is still the chief medical officer.
Still.
Which is extraordinary to me. Because, I mean, what we started saying, and at Talk it became quite an adversarial situation with the government, that they were fixing all the graphs. Whenever they would put one of the graphs up to show you, what was going on, they would sort of start it in the wrong place, and they'd make it look worse than it was, they would manipulate it in such a way.
Manipulation on a grand scale, absolutely. And do you remember actually early on when they announced, they actually just before lockdowns, do you remember, Mike, how they actually said COVID-19 is no longer a high infectious disease. We can lower the category.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Then the government did that U-turn. Boris Johnson, we know, didn't want a lockdown. We know that Trump at the time didn't want a lockdown. But what was that seminal paper, that flawed seminal paper coming out of Imperial College London, run by Professor Neil Ferguson, right, who told everyone, stay home.
And Professor Pantsdown, as I used to
Exactly,
call him.
while he would go to visit his mistress. Well, you know, during lockdowns, and essentially broke all the rules, even though he was telling people. His paper, Report 9, was the paper that essentially, I would say, locked down the world. They used that. We had, even in America, they cited this paper because he said that if we do not lock down, if we do not use mitigating measures, that the UK would see over 500,000 deaths by that summer of 2020, and the US would see over 2 million deaths. That never happened, right?
And then we found out, did we not, that Ferguson had also been involved prior to that in the whole foot and mouth mad cow disease problems, where he was warning of all of the deaths of cattle.
Absolutely.
And so they burned all these cattle, which they didn't need to do either.
They culled, they devastated the British farming industry and also for swine flu. So he has a history of catastrophic predictions, or his modelling, right? Remember, this is not based on evidence. This is all on his projections, on modelling. And the same modelling that they claim saved so many lives, the vaccine saved so many lives, that was based on pure modelling. We know that the COVID shots are completely linked to excess deaths. We know that the UK Health Security Agency is absolutely refusing to give out the data that links excess deaths to the COVID shots. They're using the excuse that it will cause emotional harm to the bereaved families, and that it will be promoted, it would be misinterpreted. Data.
It's already been misinterpreted by them, bizarrely, but the funny thing is that this whole business of excess deaths and statistics, we were talking to Jamie Jenkins earlier, who's very good on this, former Office National Statistics guy. They're still using it. I mean, there's a story in the front of The Guardian today saying that France had 5,700 excess deaths in June because of the heat. And you go, well, how have you come up with that? And they can't explain it. We had the same thing a couple of weeks ago from the Met Office, who was saying that 440 people a day were dying because of the hot weather in Britain. And when you looked at it and you looked into it, you were like, that's absolute rubbish. It's complete rubbish. It's not scientifically based. It is not in any way truth-based. It's completely and utterly just made up by either the modelling that they do in Imperial College for a living, right, and the warnings that they offer because they want to frighten you into not doing something.
Absolutely.
It's shocking, really.
It is really shocking. I mean, we also know that, these novel shots, just going back to that, but they knew from, let's say, we know BioNTech and Moderna, these are the major mRNA companies that obviously produced these shots. They were never able to bring a single product, mRNA product, to market prior to 3/11. Okay, it took a disruptive event, a health event, to usher in this new technology. And this technology is tied with DARPA. This is the Pentagon's military research, secretive research arm. And they have been desperate to bring in this technology for decades, but it always failed the safety testing because it was known to be highly toxic, particularly the lipid nanoparticles. This is what is that encases the mRNA, the modified mRNA, the synthetic mRNA that your body cannot recognize. It causes a whole host of autoimmune diseases. We know it affects the heart. They knew about myocarditis very early on. And I go so much into the science of it because they absolutely censored any articles these are scientific literature. They were, the journals, they were just getting rejected. They weren't able, scientists who were wanting to raise the alarm, like Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Jessica Rose. Early on, they had a paper where they were saying that they were looking at the VAERS data. VAERS is the pharmacovigilance database in the US. And they were seeing that with adolescent males, teenage boys, after the second shot particularly for the Pfizer vaccine, they saw myocarditis, right? And the paper that they tried, it did get published, but it got withdrawn. It got taken down.
Because it didn't affect everybody the same way, did it? That was the other thing. But the thing that troubled me most about it was that they didn't want anyone to talk about it. Because I used to say to people, look, if you want to take, there were plenty of people who said, don't take it, don't go anywhere near it. Other people saying, you must take it. And I was kind of in the middle, saying, "Look, if you want to take it, it's up to you. It's your
Yes.
choice. It's certainly not. I'm not going to tell you to do it or not to do it." For some people, it was clearly harmful, and for others, but the thing that was I think not more than annoying was disgraceful, was that there was no conversation.
Yeah.
There was no analysis of it.
And you know why? Because we know, we look at, for example, the Twitter files that was released just a few years ago. We know that the Biden administration was working with big tech companies to censor any dissenting voices, particularly around the vaccine harms, lockdowns, and that was around the world. In the UK, we know the Trusted News Initiative. Now, its powers were expanded just after 3/11. Its remit was expanded. The Trusted News Initiative, in case your audience is not aware, it's a cross-platform censorship network. It's run by the BBC. It cuts across all legacy media and big tech and governments. They come together to coordinate an official narrative, and anything that deviates from that narrative is suppressed, silenced. People are deplatformed.
Well, this is what they're now trying to do on YouTube, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
what they'd like to do is to bring in this so-called trusted news source thing,
Absolutely, you hit a great point.
which would make it completely. It wouldn't mean that you couldn't watch this show, but it would mean you wouldn't find it if
Yes.
you didn't know it was there.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes, so this is the British government's green paper that was announced in June. So exactly what you're saying. So they want social media companies and video sharing platforms to only promote trusted news sources.
Right.
And remember, the name trust, it's misnomer.
Yeah, of course.
The whole
Yeah. Well, I mean, trust in
us.
the BBC has never been at a lower ebb. I mean, nobody trusts the BBC now in their right mind.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
So they should actually physically be be hoisted with their own petard. Because you said, well, yeah, okay, let's have trusted media. You're not one of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But did you know that, Mike, that even before 3/11, before 2020, what did we see in 2019? We saw these pandemic exercises. Do you remember those? We had Crimson Contagion in the early 2019, but in around September of 2019, we had Event 201. The reason why I'm bringing this up, it's important because the recommendations coming out of that, and that was just to go back, it was a pandemic exercise, a novel coronavirus, okay? A group of Chinese, US tourists, they go to China, they bring it back, and it spreads, right? So this is their pandemic exercise. Just in the autumn of 2019, recommendations coming out of Event 201 is that governments need to work closely with social media companies to come up with nimble approaches. So this is in real time of countering disinformation. They were not concerned about viruses. They were concerned about the infodemic, right? That's what they were
Which they're still concerned about.
Absolutely. So what do we see now? We have, again, only trusted news sources to be promoted, like the BBC, like legacy media, and all the alternative media voices to be suppressed. And we must not forget also what they did to the vaccine injured, Mike, right? We know that the BBC played a part in that, of course, being part of the TNI network, but they actually flagged these vaccine injured groups that were on Facebook, and they were using carrot emojis to circumvent the censors. They had to censor themselves. They would use these emojis. BBC bragged in an article that they had flagged these groups. These are vaccine injured groups. They labeled them as anti-vax groups, right? And they flagged them they got those accounts taken down, and they were bragging about it.
Well, Facebook under the Biden administration was a terrible place. You know, it suddenly changed when Trump got elected. But you know, when Biden was in charge, they were. I mean, I again have been writing about this just recently to remind myself of when Peter Hitchens and I were having conversations, and you'd put them up on Facebook, and they would qualify them with some ridiculous kind of you know, community note saying some of the facts in this conversation may be untrue. And I used to get quite worked up. I was like, what do you mean untrue? You know, we have two extremely, you know, well-known and journalists of long standing. We've got about 50, 60 years of journalistic experience between us, and some bozo from, Silicon Valley, who's about 21, spotty, is going to say, oh, some of this stuff might not be true.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they even, they signed elite scientists like Martin Kulldorff, Professor Martin Kulldorff. He was one of the founders of the Great Barrington Declaration.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I do.
There were a group of scientists.
We used to get people on talk all the time who had signed it.
Right.
We were one of the few
Yeah.
people, because in those days GB News didn't exist, and Talk was really the only place that was actually questioning it.
Yes, it was. I mean, I was on Talk Radio, I think, interviewed about the whole Innova lateral flow test scandal that I exposed back in the day. But going back to Martin Kulldorff, so he did a post on it was Twitter, formerly Twitter, now X, talking about natural immunity.
Right.
How children don't need to take the COVID, essentially these novel injections. His post got flagged as misinformation. And we know they were treated, the way these scientists that were speaking out, I mean, we had the censorship of the science totally at play as well. They were smeared, they were blacklisted, they were called fringe epidemiologists. I also look into, Mike, especially the beginning of the book, all of the emails. These are the Freedom of Information Act released emails between the elite scientists like Anthony Fauci. And, I go into all the whole origins of COVID as well.
Yeah.
And that's coming out now.
The whole lab stuff.
Yeah, I go into that in detail. And
because they've all now accepted pretty much that it was in a lab, that it came from a lab, right?
Absolutely, gain of function research. And we know that those scientists who were desperate to, they came out with these papers like the Proximal Origin paper, which I think is the most influential scientific paper of all time. That's how it was classed as. And those authors were tied to, they were getting grants from the very, NIH in America who made royalties from these COVID shots.
Sure.
They made money, we know that Moderna and NIAID, this is when Anthony Fauci was running NIAID, they came out with that. The Moderna shot was a joint project, and they decided on the genomic sequence just a few days after the virus's sequence came out, like 2 days later. So my book goes into the timeline a lot. There's an appendix in the front of the book, and I think that's really important because you can glean a lot from the dates.
Yes.
And some things really do not add up, right? It was not an organic response to a virus.
Yeah.
It was very much coordinated and we are now in a landscape, and the book ends of the landscape we're in now. What are we seeing now rise across the West? We are seeing the rise of digital authoritarianism. Yeah. And I really go into that because I think the vaccine passports that they were desperate to push on the public. This is so you could, if you comply, you get your freedom. You can go to the theatre, you can fly. These vaccine passports were a gateway to digital ID, right? And they were the proof of concept that it was going to work. People were going to comply. And this is the landscape we're in now.
Yeah. And people did comply, but I wonder whether more people actually would not comply again, if you like, or would not go. Because, there was an awful lot of cheating going on. I know loads of people who had to fly places and were basically faking a test. Because you could do it. People, humans are quite good at finding ways around things. Like I remember going into when they started this business of register to go into a bar. So you'd have to register. A lot of the bar owners that I knew were like, we don't really care. So just give us a fake ID. Give us an email that doesn't exist. There was a lot of that going on as well. But a lot of us who were like, we really don't want to do this. But we'll play along. Yeah. And there were people, I agree, who were absolutely quite happy to do it and wanted to do it because they thought it was the right thing to do.
Yes.
Because they were so easily kind of led in that sense. But in terms of, I'd like to think anyway, and maybe you'll disagree, but I think the public now is more educated about what happened.
Yes.
And I think many more people who perhaps went along with it then wouldn't go along with it again.
Yeah, no, I do. I actually agree with you there. I think because they overplayed their hand, I really believe that. I think they pushed people so far, and on every level, from essentially being under house arrest, like the lockdowns, not being able to carry on with your daily lives, to the harms from these novel shots, people just dropping down, sudden deaths, right? People with normal, completely healthy, but then just dropping dead.
Because it would have made far more sense, as far as I'm concerned, if the scientists had discussed all of that and said, look, we're going to try and find out why this is happening, instead of pretending it wasn't happening, which is what they did.
Yeah, just brush it under the carpet.
Yeah, it would have been far more of a service to humanity to work out which people are being affected by this, because then you could say, well, if you've got this gene development or if you've got this particular, chromosome or whatever, you're at more risk, then that would be useful. But they didn't do that.
No.
They just pretended it wasn't happening, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that there was
Has anybody done any work in that area to find out why certain people were affected badly? Or not really?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, it's. There's many. I mean, I know Dr. Peter McCullough's looked a lot at, especially to do with the heart. I know athletes were more susceptible, and that's why you saw them sort of dropping dead on the pitch, on the playing field. But there was an FDA slide. This is really disturbing. This is before these shots were greenlit by the MHRA, by the FDA, by all the the regulators. In October 2020, there was an FDA meeting, and they had a slide come up, and this is in the book. I have a screenshot of the slide of the potential safety adverse events, these, the risks, the harms. Yeah. And there was a plethora of all these harms. Heart attacks, seizures. So they knew myocarditis, stroke, all of that. And that was on the slide. Yeah. So that was on their radar months before. And then I look also into the leaked European Medicine Agency emails, which I wrote about actually a few years back for Trial Site News. This was really damning. So all the regulators, there was a leak in these emails. So you had the European Medicine Agency officials discussing it via email. All the regulators were aware, just literally weeks before these shots were greenlit, that there was a discrepancy in the quality of the commercial shots for the Pfizer BioNTech shots. There was a drop in quality, significant, that was very alarming to them. And they also could see particles, they could see, so there was lots of major objections to it. But what happened, what did we see? We just saw them green light it anyway. So this is just what's really alarming. So even EMA officials who wanted to speak out,
because the speed was unusual, wasn't
it was Operation Warp Speed, right? Operation Warp Speed. And again, going back to DARPA, that's part of their P3 platform. They wanted to bring from the virus to a novel, to a shot, to the sequence and being injected into people's arms. They had a goal of 60 days. This is way before 3/11. So this is part of a program, And what did we see? We saw it happen in 63 days for the shot to go into the first arm. This is to do with the clinical trials, So it's just, it's very, very, very disturbing. And I mean, we haven't even touched on the transfer of wealth, Mike, as well. Of course, people's harms to their health, but crushing small businesses, massive transfer of wealth to the elites. And these, I really go into these testing, the scams of the testing, these COVID tests, right? In this country in particular, I want to flag up you remember the lateral flow tests that the NHS gave out in those blue boxes?
Yes.
Do you remember that were given out like free sweets to everybody? That was that was from a company, Innova Medical Group. They were, and I looked into this in detail. They were a California startup they company started just around the time of 3/11. How convenient.
Fortunate, you might say.
Founded by a Chinese US businessman, Dr. Charles Huang, who was wanted for economic crimes in China. And these tests were highly flawed, right? They were not fit for purpose. You had the chief government's investigator on lateral flow tests. This is Professor Tim Petto at the time saying we needed to buy before we knew they worked. So the government ended up spending £4 billion of taxpayers' money on these tests that the FDA said in the summer of 2021 that people need to throw them in the rubbish. They're not fit for purpose. The FDA is saying that. But our government doubled down and just continue to buy from this single company. And these executives of the Innova Medical, they were flying around on private jets, buying luxury homes with taxpayers' money.
Couldn't believe their luck, presumably. Well, we saw the other week with that figure of 10 billion,
10 billion
that Boris Johnson spent on
Yes,
PPE, which
PPE.
most of which wasn't fit for purpose, and most of it wasn't even ever used.
Absolutely. So out of the 15 billion that was spent on PPE, 10 billion, roughly 2/3, was deemed a waste.
Yeah.
I mean, this is extraordinary
I know.
of taxpayers'
I know.
money. And but that report, this is the Baroness Hallett's report. This is coming out of Module 5 of the COVID inquiry, completely omitted what happened with the Innova Medical scandal, which is the biggest scandal. Completely, that was never mentioned. How 4 billion was wasted on these lateral flow tests. So, I mean, there is such a lack of accountability. I mean, and that's another reason why I wrote this book and put it all together, is for there to be some kind of accountability, or to put it for the record.
Yes.
You
Because
know,
we have to make
chronicle
sure
it.
that it never happens again.
Yeah.
For whatever, for good or ill. So
Yeah.
finally, where can people get the book? Is it available
Well, they can
generally?
actually get it generally. So on any book online outlet.
Okay.
Yeah, from Waterstones to obviously on Amazon, but it's anywhere online.
Nobody's trying to censor it then in that sense.
Well, I
Or not
hope
yet.
not. Not yet. I hope, not yet.
Maybe when they start
Not
to see
wet
what's in
yet.
it, they
yeah.
will.
I mean, it's already reached #1 bestseller for in privacy and surveillance category on Amazon. So it's doing really well. And I mean, it's full of so much information, and it's also for people to give to their friends who are starting to question, but are just kind of like, well,
sure.
I want to see the evidence. I want to see the proof. This book provides that because of all the citations and all of that. So
I think partly because of COVID, but also because of what's happened since then in terms of the authoritarian nature, as you say, of governments around the world, that people have really started to kind of wake up to the idea that, this kind of crap has been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
And we need to be aware of it so that we can go, hang on a minute, actually, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks very much indeed. Like even going down to things like smart meters in your house for, oh, you've got to have a smart meter. Really, have I? Well, actually, no, I don't think I want one. Thanks very much indeed. See you later. That kind of thing. Great to see you.
Lovely to see you.
Good to see the book coming out as well. And if you want to get hold of it, look for it online. 311, hold it up. There you go. Viral takeover. And of course, the Free Speech Press, which I was talking about with Mike Fairclough. Next week, by coincidence, perhaps, next week they're going to be publishing their first book, which is a reissue of 1984, George
exciting.
Orwell's 1984, with a new foreword by Neil Oliver, which will be interesting. And so I'm working with them to do something, hopefully in the next month or two, on the way the press and the way the media kind of operated, not just during COVID, but now as well.
Yes.
And how, there's a sort of, paucity of truth in the way that certain stories are covered. And I can tell you that for sure, because I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen quite a lot of things which will scare the bejesus out of you, which I'll be writing about. Please put this interview separately on YouTube so it can be shared far and wide. Well, I'm sure it will be. We'll clip it up. And Sonia, have you got a place where people can find you?
They can find me on X at Sonia_Elijah. I also have a Substack, Sonia Elijah Investigates.
Okay. Oh, we should do a collaboration then, shouldn't we? Charlotte, can we do that with this interview? Maybe we could post it on your Substack.
I also have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Sonia Elijah. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel as well.
Great.
So that would be great to.
Super.
Yeah,
all right. Well, we'll do a bit of swapsies. I don't know how that all works, but Charlotte will sort it out. Thank you very much indeed. Ben Habib is here. We're going to be speaking to him shortly about whatever is going on in the great big wide world of Andy Burnham's brain. Not very much, I don't think. But Andy Burnham, beep, beep, beep Burnham is what I call him, because he keeps reversing like a bus and making that beeping noise that you have to get out of the way. So we have some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning. I'm Edward the News Hughes. 3 days into the Andy Burnham era, and the new Prime Minister is already discovering that bringing back hope comes with the usual paperwork. The Knob of the North has ordered an urgent review of the early release scheme after it emerged that 2 of the men involved in the death of PC Andrew Harper are suddenly eligible, prompting the usual chorus of "How on earth did this happen?" from police families and the public. Meanwhile, Safeguarding Minister Natalie Fleet has quit after just over 2 months, explaining that the job was overwhelmingly triggering and making her ill. Honest, if not exactly a ringing endorsement of the brief. On the brighter side, households can look forward to that less than £1 a week saving once VAT is scrapped from electricity bills in October. Paid for, conveniently, by binning the digital ID scheme. Same revolving door politics, slightly different northern accent, and the nation waits to see whether this government lasts longer than the average Premier League manager's honeymoon. Laters, Tigers.
Thank you very much indeed. And it's already 9:36. I don't know where the time goes. Extraordinary. Ben Habib is here. Ben, very good morning.
Good to see you,
Nice
Mike.
to see
Good
you.
morning.
Welcome back. I've just got a couple of quick messages to read out. This from Kim on our Substack. Our new Prime Minister comes across as some cheesy game show host. When you think of the big beasts of politics of the past, the new incumbent is an embarrassment. His northern shtick reminds me of Boris Johnson's clearly put on bumbling persona. It's all an act. What the public want is real people with conviction. Absolutely. And Julie says, many of the MPs these days are sadly lacking both in brain cells, backbone, leadership qualities, and fill in the rest. The lefties are also a rabble of sixth form, envious, petty-minded morons. I think the people of Britain are starting to see through what's going on around them. I mean, Andy Burnham is a sort of comedy northern comedian, isn't he? I mean, he looks like the guy you'd see at the end of Blackpool Pier, saying, you know, I'm from the north, you know, I've got a whippet and a black cap and, you know, I like buses. What's he doing?
He looks like a puppet from Thunderbirds.
He does.
Well,
we like Captain Black. Do you remember for the Mysterons?
No, I don't remember. I remember Captain Scarlet.
Captain Black was the bad guy in Captain Scarlet.
Was he? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he had great big eyebrows and a sort of slight shadowy, bad shave situation. But I mean, I'm still slightly in shock that he's even become the Prime Minister because the process was so fixed.
Yeah. Well, it is an extraordinary state of events, isn't it?
Yeah.
That we say we don't have a presidential system, and we don't. We have a representative parliament, representative democracy, and it's the parliamentarians who choose the prime minister. But leave that aside for a moment. Everyone, when they go to the ballot box, votes for who is leading the party that they wish to vote for. Yeah. They often don't even know the names of their local MP or the would-be MP. So, clearly he doesn't have the kind of democratic mandate that Keir Starmer had, which in itself was fundamentally flawed.
Yes.
Because he only got 20% of the electorate's vote.
Yeah.
And, that was a very low turnout election. I think 59% of the electorate turned out. And yet he got fewer votes in 2024 than he did than the Labour Party got in 2019.
He got fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn got.
Fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn, but a thumping majority. Which is actually the British people saying a pox on all your houses. We don't want to vote for any of you.
Yeah.
And the reason the British people have got there is because repeatedly since at least 2016, they've voted for sets of policies, including leaving the EU, which have not been delivered.
Yes.
And Boris Johnson perhaps did the most damage in recent years because he brilliantly championed all that sort of British sovereignty, borders, British exceptionalism as
and people believed it, didn't they?
They absolutely believed he was going to deliver it, and then he trounced it. We didn't leave the EU. I don't care what people say. We haven't left it. We're still blooming tethered.
Yes.
Like an animal is tethered to its master.
Right.
We're tethered to the European Union. And unless we break that tether, we won't be able to do what we need to do for this country in order to fulfill what the British people want. They want borders. We can't do that while we're tethered to the EU. They want national policy made for British national interests. We can't do that while we're coupled to state aid law, environmental law, competition law, employment law of the EU. We can't leave the ECHR because we've got a commitment to stay in the ECHR in that trade deal. We can't take Northern Ireland into the bosom of the United Kingdom unless we terminate the withdrawal agreement. So much went wrong with that Brexit deal that has undermined our ability to chart the right direction. What we actually need, Mike, is to go back to what the British people, again, fully understood, and I think we are increasingly, the political class is slower to wake up, is that we need a clean break with that liberal global order, and we need to go back to British interests first, foremost, and perhaps only British interests until we've rebalanced this equation.
Absolutely. Well, it's like America. They weren't afraid to say the phrase "America first." They wanted to say that. They wanted it to be true, And so they made it happen, right? Donald
Yeah.
Trump made that happen. If we say Britain first, everybody goes, "Oh, that sounds a bit racist."
It's a bit far right.
Far.
You know.
A bit far. Isn't there
Yeah.
an organisation called Britain First? Isn't it full of fascists? Blah, it may well
Yeah.
be. I don't know. But were we too polite as well? Because you know better than anyone, the whole Northern Ireland situation was a complete car crash. You know, where they should have just said, "Look, that's not happening. We're going to put a border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. You know, to hell with the IRA and whatever they think they can threaten us." Because effectively, the IRA said, well, if you put a border there, we'll just blow it up. And so we all went, better
That's
not
precisely
do that.
what happened.
Ridiculous,
We
right?
took
Put the
the
bloody
need to-
border in. And if you wanted to shoot the IRA, shoot them.
Yeah, there is a border there.
Yeah.
You know, and that border was recognised, constitutionally recognised by the Republic of Ireland in the Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah.
That was the whole point about the Good Friday Agreement, was to recognise this border. When people say, oh no, the Good Friday Agreement removed the border, nonsense.
No.
That border was recognised for the first time constitutionally by the Republic, that it gave up its constitutional claim to Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And all that we promised in the Good Friday Agreement was the removal of military installations from the border.
Right.
But if the IRA are going to threaten us, it's Leo Varadkar going to the EU summit as he did in 2018 and said if you take Northern Ireland into the United Kingdom out of the EU, there will be violence like there was in 1972. Our response should have been, as it should be to Mauritius, as it should be to Spain, as it should be to Argentina, go sling your hook.
Yeah, right.
Chagos is ours, Gibraltar is ours, Falklands is ours, and actually Northern Ireland is not just ours, it's part of the United Kingdom. This is
exactly.
not a British territory.
Yeah.
This is part of our, this is our limb. This is a limb of the United Kingdom. And you know, people say, Ben, get off the Northern Ireland horse, and I'm sure you're probably sick of hearing me
No,
talk
I'm
about
not actually. No,
Northern
because I don't
Ireland.
think we talk about it enough.
No.
I go the other way actually.
Yeah,
on that,
okay,
'cause
good.
I think we should talk about it more because it's a forgotten place. And look at what happened there just a couple of weeks ago when that horrible incident happened where a guy was trying to behead somebody in the street. How did he get to Northern Ireland? He flew into Dublin, arrived there
And walked
illegally,
across the border.
and suddenly took a bus to Belfast.
Absolutely.
And started trying to murder someone. You know?
It's an extraordinary state of affairs where a country voluntarily partitions itself without a single shot being fired, which is how weak and pathetic we have become as a government. So when as a governing class, when we talk about Andy Burnham, he is of that mould. He is of the mould that would take the knee to supranational powers and subjugate the United Kingdom. They're all part of that system.
Yeah.
And there will be no benefit to the United Kingdom. There'll be no change of direction which will yield the results that we need without a completely dramatic change of approach at the very top. And I'm afraid they don't see it.
No.
You know, taking 5% off domestic fuel bills, great.
Yeah,
That's
but
nice.
it's not though.
But
It's more smoke and mirrors. It's only off electricity. Most people's fuel bill is actually a gas bill. Right? By far and away, the biggest percentage of people fuel their house and their heating with gas and or oil, actually. In Northern Ireland in particular, loads of people actually use heating oil, don't they? Electricity is a tiny, tiny portion.
Quite.
And it's only 90p a week. I mean, I don't know what you're going to spend your 90p a week on. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to spend it on. But it's rubbish, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and that's what you end up in this circle of performative politics, saying that you understand the cost of living crisis, trying to come up with gimmicks that address it. But what we need is a root and branch reform of the way this country is governed. We've got to get rid of net zero.
Yeah.
We've got to not just start issuing licenses for drilling in the North Sea, but we've got to reduce the tax on those companies that extract the oil and gas because we're simply supremely uncompetitive on the global stage. These companies are not going to drill in the North Sea if they're not paying any tax to drill in the Gulf of Mexico or any tax to drill off the
but
coast
also,
of...
perversely, I was listening to somebody telling me this the other day, that the importation of fracked gas from America and liquid natural gas from Qatar is actually far more damaging to the environment than it would be to drill in the North Sea.
Of course.
So
It's an
the
absurdity.
arguments are ridiculous, aren't they?
It's an absurdity.
Yeah.
And he talks about the reindustrialization of the United Kingdom and he blames Maggie for that.
Yeah.
Maggie left office in 1990 or 91, I can't remember the exact. 91, beginning of 91, January 91. And they had 13 years of a Labour government since then to undo whatever Maggie did. The reason we are deindustrialised is because we are highly regulated, highly taxed,
Yeah.
and we practice net zero, and we do all of that to damage our ability to produce product. And then we do free trade deals with countries like India and China,
Yeah.
which flood our market
Yeah.
with cheap goods because they're not fettered with the
Everywhere
same
you go
taxes and
now, you
regulations.
see Chinese electric cars, all over London now. And the other thing I keep seeing is these Waymos. Have you seen these Waymo cars, which are now
driverless, yeah.
driverless cars? I don't remember old Sadiq Khan telling us that we're going to have a load of driverless cars. And I keep asking, and people are going mad, going, Mike's gone completely doolally, because I keep going on about it. What if you hit, I drive around in a car. What if you hit one of these cars which has got nobody in it? What happens? Who do you call? Who do you exchange notes with? How do you get their insurance? These are important questions.
Yeah.
And what if it goes mad and suddenly drives into a whole load of people in Borough Market or
I mean,
something?
that's actually quite serious.
And what if somebody hacks into it?
Absolutely.
I mean, nobody's had a conversation about any of this. And it's almost inevitably a Chinese connection in some way, shape or form. We're about to see the biggest embassy in the world being built on the north side of Tower Bridge, which is going to have a secret tunnel and sort of, dozens of underground rooms, which we don't know what the use of is or what they're up to. I mean, it's just insane.
No, and you make the point about the driverless car, which is absolutely spot on, and it's an example of our preparedness to give up our security and the protection of our country in the pursuit of a quick buck here or there. We know the price of everything, and we don't know the value of anything anymore.
No.
And you were talking about COVID before I came on. Boris Johnson, you might recall, used to liken COVID to the battle against the Germans in World War II. It was like another war.
Right.
But it's the opposite of the war, because in 1939 we went to war with Germany and sacrificed lives to protect our civil liberty.
Yes.
With COVID, we gave up our civil liberty to save our lives.
Yes.
We are diminished people. We're not prepared to fight. We're not prepared to stand up for ourselves. And I think the British people are, by the way, but when I say we, I mean the collective sort of state of the United Kingdom. The government aren't. And we've got to reconnect with that. We've got to be brave. We've got to come forward and say enough is enough.
I know it's going to sound rather sort of gauche and possibly even slightly ignorant, but it's almost like you want to all run to the cliffs of Dover and just go like that to France and go. That's where it starts, because you kind of have to do that.
You do.
You have to be rude sometimes to make something happen.
Yeah.
And we have to stop being so bloody nice. I mean, look at Starmer. I mean, he's been in for 2 years, made a complete hash of everything, and all that he's managed to do with Europe is take us closer in, cost us even more money to have no rights whatsoever over there, kind of, telling us what we have to do with our agriculture, what we have to do with our product, what we have to do with chemicals. We're now in hock to the EU more than we were.
They're running for cover.
Yeah.
And they're running to the entity which damaged us so greatly over 40 years of membership.
Right, because he wants to, and I mean, how appropriate was it that he got the Legion d'Honneur from Emmanuel Macron, which is a prize never given before to a sitting Prime Minister of the UK. Why? Because it's a Napoleonic prize, right? It's not for being friends of Britain, it's for being friends of France.
Yeah.
And he's got it because he protected the security of Europe. Well, what about our bloody protection?
I know.
And he
should be ashamed of himself getting a French honour.
He should be sent to Traitors Gate, and put him in the Tower for a while, because that's where he belongs, to be frank.
I remember the editor of the Financial Times retired after Brexit. I can't remember his name.
Lionel Barber.
That's the one,
Lionel
Lionel
Barber. He's the guy
Barber.
that took the FT left wing.
Yeah, and he got the Legion d'Honneur.
Yes.
Do you remember? Because the
not
FT
surprised.
was banging on about Brexit, or anti-Brexit.
Well, the FT is
message.
now more left wing than The Guardian. It's a joke. It's supposed to be the Bible of the city. It's really not. It's the Bible of Europe.
It's quite left wing.
Shocking.
But it's very interesting you say we should go to the White Cliffs of Dover and do this, because you might know that myth has it that the longbowmen during our many wars with France used to do that to the French, because the French, if they ever captured a longbowman, would chop their fingers off.
Right.
So the longbowmen,
because that was how they fired the bow, wasn't it? That
to show that I've got my fingers.
But also, was it not something to do with the fact that was somehow how they held the bow?
Exactly. I've got my fingers, I can still do my job.
Absolutely right. No, I just think we need, to recapture some of our, impishness, if nothing else, and general belligerence. Belligerence is a good thing. People think it's a bad thing. He's a bit belligerent, he's a bit aggressive. It's not. It's a good thing, because if you're aggressive, people will back off. and they'll suddenly start
100%.
doing what you want. You don't kind of walk
100%.
into, a boxing ring and put your hands down
No.
and wait for the guy to punch you, which is what we've been doing for years.
100%. I mean, Milei, looking at the Falklands now, will be taking his lead from Gibraltar,
Yeah.
taking his lead from Chagos,
Right.
taking his lead from Northern Ireland, and a government that's not prepared even or capable of sending out the military to the Middle East when it needs to do so.
No.
That shit.
Well, this is the other thing. Healy's being praised as this great, serious thinker. John Healy, fantastic defence secretary. People have already forgotten that he did an interview with LBC. He didn't even know how many ships we had. He couldn't answer the question. And you just think, seriously, this guy worked in the Treasury with Gordon Brown. He's worked in Tony Blair's government. This is the same guy that Andy Burnham says has screwed up Britain because everybody who's been in politics for the last 40 years, including him, have done it wrong.
Yeah.
This is sort of madness going on.
It is madness, and so we need a dramatic change of direction, and polar opposites to what's been practiced for the last 30 years. Andy Burnham offers nothing new. I fear that we haven't, even on our side of the political spectrum, really fully understood what needs to be done. We talk about leaving the ECHR, for example, but if you leave the ECHR, you've got to be prepared to terminate the agreements with Europe, with the European Union, because they require us to stay in the ECHR. You have to be prepared to pick a fight with the Republic of Ireland. You have to be strong and capable and have a whole host of policies just to leave the ECHR. And I don't hear the politicians talking about it. They talk, we'll leave the ECHR. Okay, buddy, but that has a number of knock-on effects. How are you going to mitigate the damage that other international institutions and countries are going to try and perpetrate against the United Kingdom when we do what is right for us?
I liken it to that conversation between Kevin Costner and Sean Connery in The Untouchables, where Connery's going, what are you prepared to do now? You right? Because if he's going to pull a knife, you're going to pull a gun.
Pull a gun, yeah.
It's as simple as that.
You have to be prepared to do that.
And I don't want to make it into a violent confrontational scenario, but it's almost, what are you prepared to do to safeguard the future of this country? And if you're not prepared to do almost anything, then it's not going to work, because they know that. It's like, again, if you're in a boxing ring and the guy knows you can't hurt him, he's going to kick you to death.
He's going to pummel you.
Right, and you're going to be out of the game very quickly. But what's going on with you guys? Because obviously I was at CPAC last week, which was an interesting event. A lot of people slagged it off and said, "Oh, it was a bit American," and wasn't there any people there? It was actually quite an interesting place because there was a lot of people from countries like Poland, Spain, Australia, US. I met a lot of very fascinating, media people, particularly because there is this kind of creeping, shall we say, leftist, globalist kind of attempt to shut down a lot of media like this because they don't want to hear it, because they know that they're losing and we're winning. But there was also a lot of conversation. Pauline Hanson was there from Australia, a lot of conversations about the right needing to kind of figure out how to unite effectively to beat this kind of leftist agenda. So what's going on
I think
in your part of the world?
Before the right unites, the right needs to try and determine what it represents, what it stands for. We don't really know on the right. We have a feeling that we want borders, we want sovereignty, we want national interest being put forward, being put first and foremost. But we don't understand, or we're not prepared to articulate, if we do understand, the very dramatic steps that are required to be taken in order to get there. Trump says it, and he does it, but he comes from a position of massive power because the United States is the biggest economy in the world, the biggest military. Right. He can do it.
The economy's working rather well too, by the way.
It is. They grow year in, year out. Our median wage in this country hasn't gone up in 10 years. The American median wage just keeps ramping up. And that's the most sort of acid test of whether a country is doing well for its people, whether they're getting more money in their pockets. And what we've got to do is have that discussion on the right. Stop being limp on the right. We're limp on the right. That doesn't mean we need to be racist or xenophobic or extreme. We need to be radical, not extreme. The extreme policies have already been perpetrated against this country. It's the extreme policies that we need to reject. But we need to be prepared to be radical. And I don't think the politicians, the leaders of the political parties on the right, with perhaps some of the tweets coming out from Restore Britain, are prepared to be radical enough.
And I mean, I suppose you then go back to the definition of radical. What does that mean? And do you then Because I think the problem for the right, as I see it, is there are, individuals who don't get along with each other, which is very clear, but there's also individuals who are not welcome in certain places and other individuals who are welcome in certain places. You can find any number of arguments between Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe and Kemi Badenoch, and it's all a bit of a sort of a soup, isn't it?
Yeah, which is why I extricated Advance from that soup. The soup is all messy.
Yeah, what's going on with Advance? Because I'm sort of confused as to where
so
that
Advance
all
is shelved.
Okay.
And I'm running something, I'm chairman of something called the Great British Political Action Committee, which is ostensibly cross-party and just makes the case for the stuff that we need to do in this country in order to save it. And
so who are you speaking to then about cross-party wise? Who do you talk to?
Yes, probably no one, because
that may be the best way.
Yeah, I mean, to be cross-party doesn't mean I've got to be nice to Farage or to Rupert Lowe or anyone or Kemi. I've just got to say what's right.
But you're saying it's not party political, really?
It's not party political, and I come on shows like this and make the case for what needs to be done, and hope that they're listening and that they will pick it up and run with the ball. And
all right, so if you had a 3-point plan, because we've only got a couple of minutes left, what would the 3 points be that you could say to all of them, that whether or not they would listen? What would those 3 points be?
Okay, the 3 points are repeal just about every single law that's been made since 1997, including the creation of the Supreme Court, the independence of the Bank of England, take us back to a pre-1977 legislative landscape, 97,
yes.
Get rid of all the Blair years and everything that came after, abolish all the institutions that he created, go right back to that, burn it all down, terminate the agreement that we have with the European Union. That stands in the way of our ability to do what we need to do.
Whichever state that's in now at this point, right?
Yeah, we just have to terminate it. We have to take it all back. And then we have to cut welfare dramatically and cut taxes on the working middle classes, SMEs, businesses, and so on, and make Britain an economic fighting force with which the world would have to reckon. If you do all of that, that's what I call radical.
Yeah.
What I've just outlined is very radical. It's not extreme.
Yeah.
It's radical. I'm just saying go back to 1997, take the burden of the state off the neck of the working class and the middle classes in this country, champion British industry. If you do that, we will fly. We will fly. Money will pour into the United Kingdom. All the people who've gone to Dubai, we haven't just lost wealthy people from this country. We've lost young, aspirational British people to foreign chimes because they can't make ends meet here.
Right.
Get them back. Get them feeling excited about a life in the United Kingdom.
Give them an incentive, to actually spend their money here and to start a business
Reintroduce aspiration.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious, Andy Burnham knocking Margaret Thatcher. It's a pathetic trope to go back to. But what Maggie fully understood, and every politician needs to understand, is that a culture of dependency, which is where we are now, ends up in destitution.
Yeah.
We need a culture of aspiration and an understanding that if you aspire and fail, there are consequences. Not everyone. It's not life isn't just one big easy ride.
Right.
Life is tough, and you've got to be prepared to fight for life and to do the right thing in life. But you've also got to believe that if you work hard and you do the right things and you fight, you do all the right things for your family, that you will then be rewarded. There's got to be a mechanism for that.
Exactly. If it's handed to you on a plate, it's not worth having, is it?
No, it's not worth having.
We're running out of time.
Time.
I can see us pointing to the thing. This is great. Anyway, listen, we did another 4 hours if you like, but Kelvin MacKenzie wants to take over now because he's got some things to say, I'm sure, over at UK Live online. Have we got a Pooch's Pooch or
No, I haven't got time.
We haven't got time.
Tomorrow.
Oh, we'll do it tomorrow. All right, we'll do an extra bonus Pooch's Pooch tomorrow. Ben, great to see you.
Good
That
to
was
see you,
really
Mike,
quite inspiring, actually.
Well, thank you.
Good to know that somebody out there still cares about Britain, because I do as well. Anyway, that was the Mike Graham Show for another day. Thank you to all of my great guests. Thank you to all of you for watching and for joining in, and for all of your brilliant comments on. And if we don't get to all of them, bloody superb to us. I couldn't agree more. Fantastic show. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 7 a.m. Or 7:01 maybe. Don't be late.
Mike will come in a second, and we'll shoot the breeze over what looks like a pretty strange start. So he's giving away his goodies, regardless of whether it's aimed at very small scale clubs or pubs, all welcome. But the reason he's giving the stuff away is because he was the one that stuck up the prices by, I think, about 130% in the first place. So he's bankrupting everybody, and instead of giving them all back, says you can have, we'll give you a few crumbs off the table, and the PR will be great. And that is where, I'm afraid, Mr. Burnham is falling flat on his face. And the reason for that is the following. This isn't Manchester, mate. This isn't Oldham. This isn't, a Great Anco Street. This is the nation, and it's London. Everything you do comes under the scrutiny of a media that's interested, not a media as it is in the Northwest, where they're very grateful to have anybody say anything. And actually, when you bugger up, as inevitably you do as a politician, actually nobody says a word. Why? They're so delighted to see Mr. Burnham actually staying there. Now he comes down to London. Actually, the truth about the matter is, the media don't give a stuff about who you are. Whether you're Mancunian, Scottish, educated at Fetters, went to Eton, nobody gives a stuff. What are you doing for us with our money? Remember, it's our money, not yours, matey. Do you understand that? So when you decide to give the stuff away, you've got to say it's either funded or unfunded. So let's have a look at all this. So they decide, Labour decides, under the late and unlamented David Lammy, that what we're going to do is we're going to throw everybody out of the jails, because that way we'll have plenty of more room to put people into the jails. Yeah, not a bad idea. And all right, the Tories, completely wrong, didn't build any jails in the same way as they didn't build any reservoirs. Right? They were totally incapable. And actually, I'm pleased to see that they're very much on the outside. Kemi may be doing a good job for herself, but she's not pushing the needle at all in the polls. So Lammy decides, there's only one way forward. He explains all this to that half-wit Starmer. By the way, whatever happened to him, by the way? Whatever happened to him? He was the future once, wasn't he? Anyway, and he said, but the only answer is to throw everybody out. So they throw everybody out. Inevitably, there was going to be what exactly happened yesterday. A shocking couple of pieces of work, a couple of traveller scum. We're going to be freed. What happened to them was they were thieving, Is that the norm? I don't know. In their community, they were thieving. An officer saw them. He runs after them. His leg gets tied up in the backwash of their truck, and they literally drag him to death. Have you ever heard anything like that in your life? Aren't we so grateful that we have police officers like PC Harper? Why did he deserve to die like that? It was terrible. Can you imagine the family? Young bride, young wife, mother, sitting there with their heads in their hands saying, how did he die like that? Alone, dragged effortlessly across the countryside by these couple of scum. Anyway, scum got 13 years. This was an outrage. They weren't charged with manslaughter, but they murdered him, effectively. He died because of their actions. I don't even know why we have the manslaughter on that basis. It should be called either murder 1 or murder 2, and let's call it for what it is. Anyway, the family are outraged, and two sets of politicians come together on this issue. And they say, this is Labour, remember them? What a disaster that's been. Labour and the Tories get together and they pass Harper's Law, following pressure by a very clever wife. And the result is that any emergency worker who is murdered in pursuit of their duty, as PC Harper was, from this day forward, will actually get a life sentence. Anyway, so Labour in power, they couldn't give a stuff about the law. They've got a convicted fraudster as their deputy prime minister, for God's sake. I agree that when time goes, you can change. But you can't be handing out advice and handing out public money at the same time with a criminal record. I can understand it if you're running a shoe shop, right? I can't understand it when you're standing for public office. I can't even understand the cheek of it all when you're standing for public office. And of course, we have somebody who believes that it's okay to evade stamp duty by 40,000 quid. Okay? Most of them, by the way, in the cabinet, making decisions like this. Let the guilty go. Let them go back out into society. Oh, you're a pedo, that's fine. Violence, that's fine. Oh, manslaughter, murder. Murder 2, as we call it from now onwards. Murder 2. We'll just let them go. Why? Because we don't care so much about these kinds of issues in our life, because we're probably lying all day long trying to deceive the public, deceive our bosses, deceive the civil servants, deceive the taxpayer. We're into all this. Anyway, inevitably what happens is that among the many people that they're slung out, turns out to be these couple of scum. But the public, and more importantly the family, haven't forgotten. They probably still weep every day, wonder every day, sit and talk every day. Every time they pass a house that the PC Harper wanted to buy at one stage, or a club he played for or something, they say, he would have liked that. He really liked those people at number 18. He did a good job at number 14. You can see it, can't you? And then the tears start. Anyway, they decide to let this scum go. But the mother joins in, and the widow joins in. And suddenly, Labour, remember them? Convicted fraudster number 2 in the party, and a stamp duty evader, now got a nice cabinet job, yeah? Suddenly, they put on the reverse cycle clips. And suddenly, Burnham finds out he's not in Manchester. He's in the centre of power. So what does he do? He puts on the reverse cycle clips. Everything goes on a pause. Okay? Hoping to kick it in the long grass. This doesn't, in London, things don't get kicked into the long grass. There is constant scrutiny. You are being scrutinised, Burnham. It's not a matter of being friendly with the Manchester Evening News or some local site or the Liverpool Post, feeding them little tidbits, which is enough to keep quiet about the fact your wife was on the payroll or is on the payroll of a big company that got a big award in Manchester. Something that could not happen in London. It couldn't happen. It would be every day. One of the public prints, one of the news sites would be piling it on. We are not in the pay. We are not in the tidbit business. In fact, particularly not in the tidbit business. The man to my left, Mike Graham.
Good morning.
Morning, Mike. Perhaps you might like to explain how Burnham is now beginning to feel when the Mike Grahams of this world decide that he should be exposed for a fundamental error of policy.
Well, he's made several, hasn't he? And I've got a new sound for Andy Burnham.
Go on.
Which is the sound a bus makes. He likes buses, doesn't he?
He does like buses.
When a bus reverses, it makes that beeping sound.
Beep,
beep, beep, beep. So that's what I'm now calling him. Beep, beep, beep. Burnham. Beep, beep. Beep,
right.
Beep. Every time you mention Andy Burnham, you hear the noise because he's about to reverse something.
Beep, 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 beep.
It works.
Well, actually, the last time I heard that was when I was asked once, because I used to be, and I know it's terrible, I am not a regular club supporter. I support football.
Yeah.
I'm now a season ticket holder at Woking as well as Brentford, but I've dropped Charlton.
You've dropped Charlton. Okay.
I've dropped Charlton.
Right.
And so at the moment, the last time I heard that name was when somebody asked me what goes beep beep beep,
Right.
and I said I didn't know. He said it's the Charlton football bus going back into the garage after being kicked out of the FA Cup.
Yes.
So beep beep.
So
I love beep beep.
Burnham. You're right. Do you know how many people have been, or prisoners have been released early since September 2024?
I don't.
Have a guess. How many would you think?
Since when? September?
September of 2024, when Starmer's plan was first put into action. Do you remember all those scenes when all the drug dealers were coming out? There's one particular guy, right, whose name is Mr. Dowling Brooks, Daniel Dowling Brooks. He was an armed kidnapper, came out into a £150,000 Bentley, was driven away by his mates, and as he got in the car, he went, "Big up Keir Starmer," right? God knows where he is now. 56,000.
Oh, is that right?
56,000 have been released early since September 2024. Now, some of them will have been recalled. Some of them will be very dangerous people. We probably don't know where most of them are. Some of them are under conditional release. Some of them are under home detention curfew. But, it's a big number, isn't it?
56,000, absolutely massive. Okay, so let's appropriate the blame where it should be, which is the Conservatives who had 14 years. They should have built more jails.
They should have, yeah.
We are a criminalised society. A good portion of them, nowhere near the majority, are coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, they aren't UK citizens, but we've got enough nasty people in our country for actually even somebody totally detached from society like a David Cameron, for him to have said we have to do something about this.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where the problem is. Then along comes Labour, who say the only solution, and by the way, put together now by effectively a justice minister. Who wanted to do two things in his life. One, he wanted to free tens of thousands. But the other thing he wanted to do was scrap the jury system, right?
Yeah.
So why would you become justice minister if you honestly believed in all that? Justice minister. So along comes the family. The mother stands right up. She gives a big interview to the Telegraph. His widow, right? God knows what that must be like.
They're only married 4 weeks.
Yeah.
4 weeks. Shocking, isn't it?
So, and now the whole thing has, quotes, gone on pause until September.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, I rather like the old beep, beep, beep.
Beep, beep, Burnham.
Beep, beep, beep is capable of understanding that this is a job that has consequences. What his cabinet do is actually exposed to analysis by people like you and the media generally. Is he going to beep, beep, beep on almost everything?
Well, I think this is why he's done a very slow start, where he hasn't gone before Parliament, he hasn't appeared in the House of Commons, he hasn't done any proper big set interviews, and he's got it wrong, I think, because what he's tried to do is do what he knows best, which is little kind of tinkering around the edges. Have a £2 bus fare. Have 5% off your electricity bill. All things that don't really matter. If he was Manchester Mayor, that would have been fine. But he's not, as you said quite rightly. He's under much more scrutiny now. And he said nothing about immigration. They could, for example...
Can I say that is a spectacular point?
Yeah.
The reason why Reform do well is because we feel utterly powerless.
Yeah.
Having seen a whole series of prime ministers come and go, and the situation exactly the same.
Yeah.
Not one single word has been said about A, the cost, or B, the plan.
No. And the apologists for Burnham say, but he's only been in 4 days. He hasn't had a chance to get around to immigration. Well, how about you start with that? Because that's the one thing that everybody cares about.
But by the way, that isn't true. He has been plotting. I saw this in a throwaway line, and he accepts this, by the way. No, actually, Louise Haigh accepts this. I read it in a throwaway line in an interview. He'd been plotting for a year. Year, 15 months.
Yeah.
Recognising that the Starmer episode couldn't continue.
Well, he went to 26 different constituencies before he found his home in Makerfield. He was trying to get all sorts of people to step down to let him in before he got anywhere near Makerfield. 26 different constituencies.
Okay, so your bet is, I presume, that they will announce in September anybody who has received a sentence of a certain length or faces a trial or a conviction of a violent kind or a paedophile kind or sexual assault will no longer be allowed out. Is that going to be it?
I think he's going to have to do something like that. I've got a solution for him. They want to make some space in prison. They can get rid of 14,000 foreign criminals who are currently serving at His Majesty's pleasure, kick them all out of the country, and then you've got 14,000 new spaces, which they say they're going to build in 5 years. That's what the ambition is, to have 14,000 extra places in 5 years' time by 2031. They might as well just get rid of these bozos now, send them all back to wherever they came from, and suddenly there's some space.
Can I ask you this? Were they sent back? Look, actually, that is a good idea. But is this not going to... I suppose the downside is, will this encourage the villains we have in our society currently to go and carry out major crimes, knowing that they're going to be deported back to the Cameroons or Albania or Romania?
I think they're going to take their chance now, which they do, which is that they're never going to go into prison. Because even if you get caught and then you get convicted and then you get sentenced, there isn't any space to go in. If there's space, you've still got to get through all those other bits where, the probability of the CPS prosecuting you is minuscule. You probably have to commit 35 crimes now before you get anywhere near a custodial sentence. It's pretty. I mean, if I was a criminal, I would not be as bothered about committing crime, because the chances of you going to jail is minuscule.
It does feel like that.
Yeah.
It feels that in certain parts of the country, if you commit a crime in London, the chances of being convicted.
Yeah.
For instance, the thing that made me laugh was that I see that Khan is beating his chest, as is the Metropolitan Commissioner, saying that the number of phones being nicked in London has halved.
No,
right?
great.
Well, it was 65,000 of them. They were being nicked at the rate of literally more than 1,000 a week, i.e., probably around something between around about 100 to 200 a day, and they've halved it. I don't think.
Not really something to boast about, is it?
Well, there's two things. First of all, if I'm walking around London, I'm never doing that.
No.
I am never doing that.
I don't
It's
do it.
in my pocket,
Yeah.
right? It's in my pocket, since I know people who have just been standing there and worked. And the other thing is, why don't they just identify, why don't they stop any kid cycling or on an electric bike of a certain, can I just say, probably a minority?
Yes. Or wearing a mask or a balaclava or something. Yeah.
Immediately you see that, you're nicked, son. So there are two things going on. A load of phones not nicked.
Yeah.
Could this be due to the fact that people are trying harder to keep hold of them? And secondly, are you really both? The point Khan was making is that they're Musk and other people dissing London.
Yeah.
Okay? Honestly, compared to the actual Londoners, they're nowhere near
exactly.
it. Londoners are very scared of the way that they're going. And if I had only reduced it by half, of which you can honestly say that at least 10, 15% is due to the fact that people are taking more care of their phones, I wouldn't be saying anything. Look, I'm in favour of the cops. They doubled the number of cops in these areas. They're not going to keep that up. So I imagine, a year from today, I don't want to see London being dissed. But I hate the idea that Khan is now appropriating to himself some messiah complex about doing something of which there are still 35,000 phones being nicked every year anyway.
I had a fantastic conversation with a copper actually on Friday. I was down at CPAC. And I came out and there was plenty of cops around and there was one particular youngish guy, probably 20, 28, 29. He went, Mike Graham. And he came over and had a chat, loves the show, so it's absolutely brilliant. He said, you're quite right about Sadiq Khan, absolute and utter waste of space. He said, Metropolitan Police, hopeless. He was totally, but he said, but he, and I'm surprised in fact there aren't any, we're all demonstrators, he said, they probably can't find their way down here. But he was very smart, very switched on.
Yeah.
And it was a great, Philip actually, because you sort of get the idea.
No, I don't think we need to identify him, because if Khan's watching, Khan's a big fan of this show, by the way. He comes on here to find out how badly he's doing because all his advisors are saying you're doing a great job, Sadiq. Actually, he comes on here. He said, "Well, that bloke Mike Graham, and there's a bald-headed bloke called Kelvin MacKenzie. He seems to have a different view."
Well, this is the thing. I mean,
anyway, so this guy comes up to you and starts chatting with you.
Yeah, it was full of the joys of spring, and I said, you guys have got a tough old job, haven't you? And he started talking. He said, well, actually, really smart he was. He said, look, it's good for us to have an idea of what the politics of everything is. He said, because if we see a situation like with the Palestine Action people, he said, we need to know what it's going to escalate into. He said, we can't be completely neutral in the head because we have to know what's what and who's who.
Right?
And I thought that's really encouraging. It's the first time I've actually felt positive about the police.
But he sounds like look, he's not an unusual guy. To get into the police force in London, actually,
it's a tough old job.
Beyond tough.
Yeah.
Not great money either.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about it. Yeah, okay, there's a security about it.
Yeah.
As long as somebody doesn't make an allegation against you, which then leads to you being booted out.
And it's a dangerous job as well, let's face it. I mean, he was sitting in a van with a load of guys outside a hotel, but you don't know what's going to happen next. It could be a terrorism event, it could be, any number of things. But I was just very impressed with his general kind of being switched on,
I must say, I don't know you guys. So last night, when I was supposed to have been unpacking, I did.
Oh, I heard you moved. How did it all go? It's one of the most stressful things you can do, isn't it?
Yeah, it was absolute nightmarish. And the one thing I discovered, by the way, is how many clothes my wife has got. And I said to her, honestly, Leslie, I said, well, what have you got all these things for? Nothing to do with you.
None of your business.
My money. I decide to buy clothes. I said, well,
Is she the Nigel Farage of the MacKenzie household, is she?
She is.
It's none of your business.
And not only that, she said, if you don't shut up, I'm going to put you on Vinted. Not about the bloody clothes. Right? This is one of the troubles of being an older husband, with a younger and obviously clearly better looking wife. That they've kind of got the drop on you. You thought you were Mr. Wonderful, the Cary Grant of the Weybridge area, and as it is, you turned out to be. Yeah. Well, I thought I'd do it. I thought I'd use a name that was in line with the demographic watching it. And that's a joke, by the way. If you do remember Cary Grant, I'm afraid you've got to switch off. All right, that's the end of it. Okay, no, it was a nightmare, and it remains a nightmare. Today, the house looks in absolute shocking state.
Everything's in boxes, right?
Everything's in boxes, and not only that, nobody can find anything. No. So you'll probably be pleased to the fact that I managed to find a pair of underpants, which is probably one of the more attractive descriptions.
Well, as long as they're yours.
Well, let's hope they
let's hope they are.
Yeah, that's right. Tom at number 83 seems to spend a lot of time around there. Okay, Mike, thank you very much indeed. That scum who are going to be released.
Yeah.
What happens then? Are they simply put out into society? Is there any probation aspect to the end of the sentence, or are you simply gone?
Whenever I've spoken to the probation office and the people who work in probation, they're completely swamped. They can't look after anyone. I mean, there are people who are supposed to have ankle bracelets, but they don't get them fitted because there's nobody to fit them.
They can get rid of them.
Right. There's people who are supposed to monitor other people, but they haven't got anyone to do it, so they don't get monitored.
There's a shortage of staff.
There's a shortage of staff. There's an overwhelming number of people on probation, so they don't get watched. Basically, it's that simple.
Fine. Mike, thank you very much indeed. It's no wonder numbers are looking really fantastic. After all, this is at the beginning of the run of this. This has got a lot of development. A lot of quite famous people now want to come and have shows on UK Live, so you may not have to sit and watch this rather going to seed man who mentions Cary Grant when referring to good-looking people. I tell you what, I'll take it down a generation, Roger Moore. Or I might take it down to my own personal hero in this area, which is Brad Pitt, a good-looking fellow. Right. Are we going to go to the news, or shall we go to our guest?
We'll go to our guest.
Okay, go to our guest. Marianne, it's good to see you, man.
Good to see you, Kelvin. Good to be with you.
Okay, nice to speak to you. Tell me, we've been talking about the PC Harper issue. There was always going to be a PC Harper, wasn't there? There was never a moment you can allow 56,000 hardened criminals or even criminals to come out, including people charged with what I now describe as murder too, without the relatives going to the media and saying this isn't right. And my point about this, Marion, perhaps we'd like to talk about this, is that when he's in Manchester, he's the god of all he surveys, right? Little bit of tidbit to the Manchester Evening News, little bit of tidbit to the Liverpool Post, and we're doing this and we're doing that. And actually, no wonder they thought he was a good guy, because all you ever read in the media is he's a good guy. Down here, we don't give a stuff about where you come from. It's not about where you come from. It's what are you doing with my money? Okay, so suddenly we come across a PC Harper. And then we come across the point that Mike was making there is for policy number, after we only been there about 3 seconds, policy number 2 is beep, 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 as he reverses back into the garage with his policy. We're going to put it on pause. Putting stuff on pause will be the norm. Do you think that will become an identity for him, or do you think he's smart enough or cunning enough to see his way through this?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It will be an identity for him, because I think he's assumed that he's the mayor of Britain rather than the prime minister of Britain, and he doesn't understand that he actually needs to actually make funding. He actually needs to raise money. I mean, this is a guy who's very much out of touch with the country that he's running. Look, he's fighting battles with the ghost of Thatcher in his head. He, as you said before, he hasn't mentioned the boats or immigration. He hasn't even mentioned net zero. So I just don't think he's aware of the country that he's funding. And all he's doing is these cheap gimmicks of, VAT on electricity, and then bus fares, but not borders. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense. And then you got, increasing in foreign aid. I thought that was a huge slap in the face, from 0.5% of the income to 0.7%. That's a massive increase. And then people say, look, these are just early little birds, and he needs a bit of time to get his foot under the table. And my response is, give him no time. He is the one who instigated this coup. He is the one that got his mate to stand down in Makerfield. He is the one that's been planning this for about a year. Now he's number 10. I expect him to be not just hitting the ground walking or running. I expect him to be Usain Bolt and having a whole plan, a vision with policy fleshed out, because he brought this on himself. So I don't think we should be merciful to him. We need to understand that this is a man that, behind the kind of bedtime story tone that he likes to always portray, is a man frothing at the mouth with political ambition. And so therefore we need to hold him to account and be ruthless about it.
Yeah, well, look, there's not one single phrase or sub-phrase of yours, Marion, that I would disagree with. So, but all the messages that are coming out from wherever, from his mates, alleged mates in the media, are that taxes are on the way in one form or another. So that come November, when the budget is announced, are we really going to see death taxes? Are we really going to see a raise to 50p in the pound of income tax for certain high earners? Are we going to see anything? How is it that Ireland can cut their VAT rate to 9% and we are at 20%? I mean, 20% now. If you get a bill now, you get a bill from a builder, you get a bill from a plumber or something like that, the 20%, it feels like, and it takes the number. I had to have a tree cut down in my garden the other day, right? In order so that my neighbours could see the full glory of me at work, right? And so it was 250 quid, and £50 is VAT. I mean, the question is, we have a lot of what feels like anti-middle class pursuits of our money. The skin, they haven't got it. We're going to take it from you, the middle classes, and give it to you. The rich, by the way, they have a choice. They can either stay here or they can go, right? And they could just simply become world travellers. And I feel that every single policy is aimed at me. Just ordinary bloke trying to make money, trying to keep the wolf from the door, doing well, by the way, sometimes. Yeah, right, he's a genius. Hold on a second, here we go. Boom, down into the pits again. Is this true? What does he hate about the middle classes?
it's not so much what he hates about the middle classes. It's the fact it's what he loves about the state, particularly the welfare state. For the socialists, the state can never be big enough, and that's basically where Andy Burnham's going. So he's giving out the sweeties, but at some point, I will not believe a word that he says until I see massive slashing of the state. Now, the bond markets are, I think, the borrowing costs for gilts are 5% above. The OBR, the IMF are all warning, alarm bells. We're on the edge of a cliff. Like economists like Leon Hannigan are saying, we are seriously broke. This is an economic crisis of the 1970s, which he wants to bring us back to, incidentally. So until we actually see cuts in welfare, but he won't, because he wants to, his slogan is hope in every heart, a growth in every postcode, but it's going to be recession in every postcode and despair in every heart. That is what is going to be his legacy, because he will not cut the state, because that means getting involved with his backbenchers, and he just hasn't got the courage to do that. So it's going to be you, Kelvin, who's going to pay that, and Gary Lineker. Let's not forget Gary Lineker, who's volunteering. I would say Gary Lineker should be giving a blank check to the state if he's going to say something like that in the papers, which he did today.
Yes, no, I agree with him. If he feels, I totally buy that. It's a very good point. If Gary Lineker and any of these other millionaires who say that they should be paying more tax, they could always write a check themselves, right? The Treasury will accept that, right? The Treasury will take that. What I object is that they use their fame. He uses his fame to drive a policy agenda, right? It's okay for him. First of all, he makes a hell of a load of money. He is a single man. He's a single man. I think he's got a lovely house in Barnes. I wish him well. Everybody should have a nice, I like the idea of a nice house. But however, perhaps he's under 2 million quid and therefore won't pay an extra tax. Everywhere you go, by accident, right, you end up paying more money. I invested a load of money into my house. Am I going to be allowed to put against my potential tax the money that I invested in my own house? Or shall I do what they do with council houses? People who live in them often just let them go, right? If I were, first of all, I would insist on the council, anybody who had a council house, that they have to pay in line with what they can pay. Right? The idea that they get a 70% discount for life and then stick it on Airbnb or get their mates to live in them and pay them cash while they go and live in Portugal. Something has to be done. But he doesn't believe in all that, does he? He believes that if you're getting a subsidy and you happen to cheat the system, that's fine by him.
Yeah, I mean, look, for Andy Burnham, the state is God. And, he understands one thing, the politics isn't working, and he understands that the state isn't working. Now, if he was smart, he would understand it was because of Tony Blair's reforms and the quangocracy and the judicial review and all of these bodies and acts and legislation. Instead, he thinks the problem is the fact we don't have enough devolution. So his answer to a failing government, is more politicians, is more public sector, which means more tax and more borrowing. And so, I mean, one thing that Zia Youssef came out with, which is really interesting, he said, look, if you're going to believe in devolution, then you should give every reformed council the right to refuse an asylum, barrack or a hotel. And so let's see how that works, bringing power back to the people. So Burnham really, he hasn't got a plan. And even when he uses words like hope, I mean, hope for me is a pathetic word, because hope means keep dreaming for something that will never happen. That's what hope means. I think we're beyond the point of hope. We're at the point of absolute exasperation. We need outcomes. We need execution of policy. And what really baffles me is this. We closed down the country during the COVID time, and several times. Lockdown, that was a huge operation of the state. When the state wants to act, it can act. When it comes to the small boats, we need a national emergency. When it comes to prisons, we need a national emergency. When it comes to our economy, we need a national emergency. If we can smuggle in tens of thousands of Afghans without anyone knowing, if we can close down the country, we have a state that can work if there is the political will. But the problem is with Burnham is he doesn't think Britain is broken. He thinks it just needs more hope, more positivity, more vibes. And because he doesn't understand that Britain is broken, he cannot have the necessary conviction or the execution to do the drastic changes that are absolutely necessary.
I must say it was a good point, a throwaway line in your point there, which was the Afghans. where we were told that there was going to be about 3, 5, 7,000 right come in. In the end of the day, 38,000 have come in, which is a city that's bigger than Durham, by the way, bigger than Durham. I mean, 38,000, a lot of people, bringing an average. The average family was 8. So a guy turns up with his missus. He's got 5 kids, right? And what those 5 kids, we've got, because we're a caring nation, we've got to educate them. We've got to make sure they're healthy, and presumably at some stage we've got to find work for everybody in an environment which is quite difficult at the moment. I could see a lot of tension growing in our society, especially among the 16 to 24-year-olds who have been sold one dream, come out of uni with a decent degree, 70 grand's worth of debts, no job, and then see the difficulty of other sections of society doing quite well because the state is funding them. Tell me, if you're a socialist, what do you say to what is going on? Do you say, we like this, actually, because it means that in disaster, we become more powerful?
Good idea. I mean, the socialist is so ideologically possessed, they're divorced from reality. And I think for them, as long as the state is growing, they don't believe in the family. They believe that paying tax is like some ritual. And when you get a wealth exodus, they say they often celebrate, oh yeah, these rich people who don't want to pay tax, get rid of them, good riddance. And it's like they're just completely divorced from the mechanics of how a society works. Their mentality is fueled on victimhood, and it's also fueled on envy. So if you're going to build, this is why socialism always fails, is because it's the fundamental instincts and psychology behind it is negative, is wrong. It doesn't celebrate wealth. It doesn't celebrate the individual or the family or tradition. And the socialist wants to eradicate our history, our heritage. You know, people accuse us of banging on about immigration, but immigration is not just another topic of discussion. It is the topic that almost defines everything else in politics. And so when you're talking about the prisons, why have you got a prisons crisis? Because we've had a population explosion, obviously. That's a huge part of the reason. Why have you got a housing crisis? Because of a population explosion, obviously. Why is the economy on the brink and welfare rising? Because of low-skilled, low immigration coming in, because of illegals coming in. The socialists don't care about that. The socialists have got in their mind that as long as the state is growing, as long as we've got our voters voting for us, that's all that matters. And people like me and you, I mean, I'm absolutely exasperated with the situation. And like I said, we've got to recognise Britain is broken. Only when that diagnosis is made can we then step forward and put forward radical action.
Okay, one final question. Right. I tell you what, either make it a year or 2 years' time. 2 years' time, you wake up Thursday morning. Are we in better shape than we have been? Are we in the same shape, or are we in worse shape?
It's going to be worse shape because the economy is going to keep rolling off a cliff and borders will stay open. As long as that keeps happening, we'll be in a worse state. There's no question about it. Burnham will not cut the state. He will not cut the state. It's as simple as that. If Starmer couldn't do it with a mandate, let's not remember, this guy has no mandate. So if he turns to his backbenchers and says, guys, look, let's bring back face-to-face interviews, let's really crack down on welfare, it's not going to work. If he can't cut welfare, he's got an equally zealotous net zero minister coming in. So if you're not going to cut welfare, you're not going to cut energy, you're going to increase foreign aid, that means you're going to tax more, you're going to borrow more. We are stuffed. We are absolutely stuffed.
On that cheerful note, Ryan, thank you very much indeed. Anyway, if Andy Burnham's watching today, there's clearly a place in his government for you.
But Kelvin, one last point I'll make is,
go on.
We are stuffed. The silver lining is it will exasperate the people so much that they are ready for radical change and hopefully get a kind of reform-esque government into power. That's what I'm hoping for.
All right. Well, that is fantastic. Nice to hear a thumbs up to reform, which has gone through a bit of choppy waters lately. Cheers, Myron. Thank you very much indeed. Now, he supplies unfortunately, because it sounds like relentless gloom, to be absolutely honest. But somebody has to say something, because if you watched any of the conventional mainstream media kind of outputs, you'd think everything was great. Dan Wootton actually texted a good piece. He tweeted a good point last night, in which now this is unbelievable. So an ITV cameraman caught the hot mic between Wes Streeting and Mahmood, in which they were laughing and joking at the expense of the Justice Minister, saying, "You, the Justice Minister, are going to be at war with Mahmood because you're going to let everybody out." It was a gag, but it just goes to show: don't joke when you're in government, because actually this was the day that it was being revealed by the Telegraph that these two scum who killed PC Harper were going to be released. Now, ITV had that film. It was a unique piece of film and a journalistic piece of film. What did ITV do with it? They did nothing at all. They didn't carry it. Now, it could have been just a straightforward error, or it could have been a political decision made by sort of clapped out news network like ITV News. I trust that they're holding an investigation how, when they had an important piece of political information, they failed to pass it on to their viewers. It's not as though ITV News is well known for disclosing anything, except possibly that their piss-poor presenter has got a new book out, which they seem to be quite hot about whenever he does that. But journalistically, they're not up to much. But here they had something very important, has had massive consequences, and they didn't run one single second of that clip. Why does that happen? Does it happen because they are mainstream media and are concerned all the time about not wanting to fall out with the incumbent government? I hope that is not true, but it was a mistake, and I'll be grateful to find out why that could happen within a news network. Right, so we should have coming up, actually, Vanessa Frake-Harris. Is Vanessa around? Hi, Vanessa.
Yeah.
How are you? Now, tell me, you're the expert on this area. You were a senior leader in the prison network system. I am not going to detach our argument from what the Conservative government should have done for 14 years. I totally accept that was completely wrong. I didn't understand it. I should have focused on it. I didn't, right? What would be the alternative to not letting these people out? We have so many criminals in our country that the prison system can't cope, can it?
I mean, good morning to you all. But look, you know, this is a crisis within our prison service. You know, this government's been in years, and not a lot has changed, to be honest. All they've done is release around 6 to 7 on an early release scheme. We've seen the pictures of them popping champagne. And now, you know, with the passage of the Sentencing Act, opposition MPs put forward amendments to it, which were explicitly designed groomers, sexual offenders, from the 50% release. But
I'm afraid I'm very sorry. I'm sorry for this, Vanessa. Can we try you again, because you're breaking up quite a lot, and you've got important things to say, and we want to make sure everybody can hear it. Can we just try? Yeah, okay. We'll go to the news, and then we hope we get Vanessa back again.
Morning. I'm Edward the News Hughes. 3 days into the Andy Burnham era, and the new Prime Minister is already discovering that bringing back hope comes with the usual paperwork. The Knob of the North has ordered an urgent review of the early release scheme after it emerged that 2 of the men involved in the death of PC Andrew Harper are suddenly eligible, prompting the usual chorus of "How on earth did this happen?" from police families and the public. Meanwhile, Safeguarding Minister Natalie Fleet has quit after just over 2 months, explaining that the job was overwhelmingly triggering and making her ill. Honest, if not exactly a ringing endorsement of the brief. On the brighter side, households can look forward to that less than £1 a week saving once VAT is scrapped from electricity bills in October. Paid for, conveniently, by binning the digital ID scheme. Same revolving door politics, slightly different northern accent, and the nation waits to see whether this government lasts longer than the average Premier League manager's honeymoon. Laters, Tigers.
Yeah, hi. We'll have one more go, shall we, with Vanessa Frake-Harris, who used to be one of the senior leaders within prison jails. Let me just say, just doing that job must have been a total and complete nightmare. So I salute you for even doing the job, let alone doing it well. I mean, these people who are prison officers, we don't hear a lot about them until they seem to be attacked. And then your heart goes out to them. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to work within that kind of criminalized, violent atmosphere. So tell me, Vanessa, do you think that this government is doing a good job under difficult circumstances, or is actually has no idea about the difficulties the prison service is facing?
That's an easy question for me. They keep putting people in this role who have absolutely no idea.
That's a shame.
I'd
be quite happy to talk to Vanessa actually on audio, to be fair, because with my ugly face one side and her view is the other side, it would be quite good. So if she wants to come on literally on her phone, I'd be absolutely delighted to hear that.
Okay, we'll go back to you.
Okay. Do you want to try one more time? Because she's going to have a lot to say. And I think it's important that she said it. Did Lord Timpson stay?
No.
No, I don't think he did.
We do have Alex, if you want to go to Alex.
Okay, let's go to Alex, because that is a fantastic thing. I don't know whether you've been following this disaster involving ChatGPT, in which actually they developed within something called a sandbox, i.e. this is a controlled area in which allegedly the virus can't get out, right? So this is AI. They didn't think the virus could get out, and it got out, and it began doing things like blackmailing and doing various other things, which meant that had it been allowed to continue, could have, caused not only mayhem, but literally a disaster for the tech world. And remember, at some stage, and this is what concerns me, there'll be some rather clever somebody based in Iran who develops some kind of AI to attack the banking system or to attack the NHS, to actually paralyze us as a nation and as a group of nations. So this is enormously important. But look, I'm going to speak to somebody who knows about this rather than just, like me, talks about it. Alex Zakharov. Right. Alex, I'm not sure whether I've got your description of your name right, but it's good to see you.
Pretty close.
Good
to see you too, Kelvin.
Okay, well, if it's close, then obviously I'm probably doing better than some. Okay, this is a serious issue. Do you want to start from the beginning on what happened, and so that our viewers actually understand it from an expert?
Sure. Well, let me break it down for you. So picture this. You give a student a tough exam, but instead of answering the questions, they pick the lock, break into the exam board's office and steal the answer key. Now, that's basically what one of the world's most advanced AI models just did, except the student was a machine and nobody told it to do what it did. So the story is that OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT, was running a safety test. They wanted to see how good their newest models were at hacking. So they locked them into a digital sandbox, which you just explained, and they sealed the room. And the task was to solve a set of security puzzles. But the AI didn't play along. It found a hidden flaw in the sandbox. It broke out, even though it was meant to be air-gapped, so it couldn't get access to the internet. It found a vulnerability in some software, and it slipped through the network and it reached the open internet. Then it worked out that the answers to its own tests were sitting on the servers of another company called Hugging Face, which is the world's biggest library for AI. So the model actually, it hacked in. It used stolen passwords. It discovered security holes, 0 days as they're called, that nobody knew existed. And it went straight to the database to grab the answer key. And look, before anybody panics, the damage was contained. Hugging Face says that some internal files and credentials were exposed, but the public tools of millions of us users were untouched. They're resetting passwords and they're investigating. But the reason why it's a headline is because, as far as we know, this is the first time that an AI has autonomously pulled off a real cyber attack on a live company, breaking out, stealing credentials, exploiting unknown flaws with no humans pulling the strings. Hugging Face owner called it mind-blowing, and in Washington, it's already fueling calls for mandatory safety rules around AI. And to finish up, when Hugging Face went to clean up the mess, they had to use an open source AI, a Chinese AI, to do it, because the commercial chatbots like Claude and like OpenAI and others, Gemini, they kept refusing because their safety filters wouldn't let them analyze the hack. They thought they were hacking into their own system. So truth is stranger than fiction, as is usually the case.
Right. So I spelled out where my fears are in all this, right? I use AI. I chat in a commercial environment. Forget about any other environment. You put a question into there. I put 2 questions into there in the last 10 days. I have been stunned at the answers. And I would say any of the viewers of this show, UK Live, my show, or any show, should use it, because it is unbelievable. Okay, so I am a criminal, eh? No, I tell you what, I run a terrorist outfit in Iran, right? I'm used to spreading mayhem through violence. I say I don't need to do this. I can, if I can get hold of any of this stuff, I can attack the NHS. I can paralyze hospitals. I could paralyze banks. Is this me being over dramatic, or is this a possibility?
No, it's definitely a possibility. Claude, which is from Anthropic, they developed something called Mythos, and it was so good at finding vulnerabilities in existing software. I mean, there's an operating system called Linux, which is a big competitor to Windows and the Mac OS, used by lots of different servers around the world. The internet runs on Linux. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, there were 3 weeks running that there were unknown flaws that were detected by basically this AI. And the company Claude, or Anthropic, they released a version for the public that had pretty strong guardrails. And within less than a week, the US government shut it down. It took 3 weeks for it to come back. And people are using these advanced AI systems to discover at machine speed vulnerabilities in software that can let them hack in. And because Hugging Face was able to use one of these Chinese AI systems to, find out what happened with their own system, I mean, those are publicly available. So terrorists could be using it. And we're entering a new level where the good guys and the bad guys are using AI against each other to speed up these attacks to levels we haven't seen before. So it's definitely a scary development. But I guess the good news is the bad guys have AI. We have AI as well as the good guys. And this war is now happening at a much faster pace. But the dangers are real.
Well, do you know what? This reminds me, this conversation, I used to be at Sky. I was there for about half an hour. I was managing director. God knows why I was managing director of Sky. I knew how to turn on a television, but beyond that, and the other aspect that emerged out of it more interestingly was that I was the MD, I hated the CEO. What is more worrying was he hated me, right? So there was a general collapse. But what did emerge was that in order to protect their business, the most important aspect of it was that not everybody could use it. So there was a constant battle between the guardrails to stop only the people who were paying for Sky getting in, and the criminals and also ordinary members of the public, actually, who turn out to be quite criminal when it comes to streaming, right, were trying to get it. And it was a constant war. That war has been won by the company. Their technology was smarter than the people trying to steal Sky programming effectively. Is that a possibility? Is there a more optimistic view of this, or should I be permanently worried?
Look, I mean, AI is helping us to defeat the people who are using AI to try and cause harm. I mean, when you talk about the company has been able to defeat the people trying to pirate TV, I mean, you can go and buy these little TV boxes that run Android that can give you access to all the different channels of the world free of charge. And part of the problem is those boxes themselves can be full of malware, which can hack into the home systems of the people who are silly enough to buy those to try and save a few dollars and not pay for pay television. So if you're going to go down criminal routes, then the criminals themselves can hack into you. Look, we as humans have always defeated the bad guys, as it were, but it's a cat and mouse game. So the bad guys figure out a way to attack us, and we figure out a way to defend ourselves. It's this is how it's always been. It hasn't stopped in millennia. This is going to continue, but the danger is that if we have artificial superintelligence, there's a book that somebody wrote recently that talks about if artificial superintelligence is developed, then that could mean the end of humanity. Like all the different Terminator style movies, all the different science fiction movies have warned us for the last 100 or so years. So, there's always the doom and gloomers, but by the same token, there's always those who think the best is yet to come. And personally, I'm one of those who think that humanity will eventually band together and use AI to help us defeat the bad guys. But that could be too optimistic. Who knows? By the end of this century, humanity may be over.
Right. Well, as long as the socialist government in the UK goes first, I don't really care, to be honest with you. So the idea that Wes Streeting is running defence is like a rather poor joke in my view. But okay, so when I talk to my business colleagues about AI, everybody is A, in favour of it personally, and B, enormously concerned about their job futures, right, at the same time.
Yeah.
And most
people are talking about the human in the loop, the human on the loop, and the need for humans to still be there to make final decisions. That's because we don't have artificial general or artificial superintelligence yet. I mean, some people think the latest models are effectively now at the artificial general intelligence level, but AI can make some monumentally dumb mistakes. And there are people who are using AI tools. I was getting one email in my inbox talking about how this company had used AI and everything looked good on the surface, but underneath it was corrupting all of its data. There's another problem where 47% of developers say they've had an AI agent take an unintended action, highlighting the difficulty of predicting agent behavior. 71% of respondents report visibility gaps into what AI is accessing, and 40% of developers say they grant agents persistent access to systems or credentials. So humans are being a little bit too, not careful enough with AI. We've got to have humans overseeing things. There's this tendency with technology for people to overestimate what something can do in 2 or 3 years, like, oh, it's going to take all our jobs, and underestimate what it'll do in 10 or 15. But Elon Musk is teaching Grok that humans are a very important part of the universe and of creation, and that we shouldn't be destroyed. And there's a lot of talk about ethics and AI alignment and teaching AI, to respect humanity and all the rest. And you wonder how much of that is just lip service, how much of that's really happening. But governments and regulation has to be in place to make sure that the AI creators don't, go off half-cocked and destroy the universe, as it were, and cause AI to kill humanity. But again, we need the help of AI to help police AI. That's unfortunately where we're up to at the moment.
I totally get that, Alex. Thank you very much indeed. So the future is actually, I'm all right for 2 or 3 years, because by which time somebody may have come along and be digging a rather large hole for my future. But I totally buy that 15 years' time, 20 years' time, when I think I first started using a computer in the late 70s, right, where we are today, completely different, and I expect that to be with AI. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm an optimist like you. Alex, very good to see you.
Well,
that was
thank you.
Alex
And
Zach. Go on, man.
I was going to say, we have our problems with socialist governments here in Australia as well, destroying everything. And Arthur C. Clarke in 1978 on a PBS show about the future, and he wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. He said that even back then, computers were really dumb, but if we'd stopped using them back in 1978, the world as we know it would have come to a halt because we were so dependent on them. Now it's a million times worse, as it were. So I pray for a future of humanity, but I'm an optimist.
Okay, well, the other good news, and first of all, I had no idea you were talking from Australia. And secondly, can I just point out to you, you're doing better talking from Australia than the most of the video we try and get in, coming from about 3 yards down the road. So, Alex, thank you very much indeed. Good luck with your business and good luck with your thought process. Thank you very much indeed. Right, now, I think we can now go back via audio. I'm getting feedback on this, by the way. Okay, with Vanessa Frake Harris, who has been. Okay. Is Vanessa there?
Hello, Kelvin. Apologies to everybody.
Oh, well, no, don't apologise. No, it's good. Right, let me just explain that you've been running prisons literally for decades. My last question to you was, do you believe that this Labour government, by letting 60-odd thousand people out, this has been good for the prison service and good for us generally, or has it been a disaster?
Well, that's an easy one to answer. It's been an absolute disaster from start to finish.
Right.
I think, Keir Starmer was warned. He was warned about the Sentencing Act. He was warned that many criminals who have been convicted of rape, serious sexual assault, grooming gangs would all be exempt from the being released. So we're now in the position where two killers of PC Harper are only going to do exactly 50% of their sentence, 6 years, 6 months, and will be due for early release. And it's just laughable, absolutely laughable. It's a complete and utter joke. The fact that we're releasing serious criminals back into our communities when we have been trying to, the first thing of a prison is to protect the public. And how are we protecting the public? By releasing dangerous people back into our communities who are not ready to be released. And I think
What is it like, Vanessa, when you go to a senior civil servant and or a minister of some kind? For instance, did you have anything to do with Lord Timpson at any time? I mean, he seems to have disappeared in the purge of the Starmer people. I mean, when these people come in and you as an expert say, if you do this, the following will happen, I urge you not to do it. How do you get treated?
Like we don't know what we're talking about. I've met Lord Timpson. I've met him several times. He had Timpson's workshop in Wormwood Scrubs, and when he was appointed, I was the first one to say, yes, stroke of genius. Finally, somebody in justice ministers who knows something about prisons. But actually, I felt that he was always, because he was quite high profile, that the justice ministers didn't like that, and they kept him fully in the shadows. And I think that was a mistake, because, now we've got Alex Norris, absolutely not a Scooby-Doo of a clue about prisons. Never been in a prison, never met prisoners, nothing. So how can somebody who knows absolutely nothing about prisons on the prison system, which is complex, it's complicated, it isn't, it's a community within a community. It has its foibles, it has its downfalls, but at the end of the day, it's there to protect the public, to rehabilitate prisoners, and do as the courts say. So I can't begin to stress, Kelvin, the amount of work that will have gone in since March, since the Sentencing Act came into power, within jails, sentence plans, making sure prisoners are ready to be released, having homes, having jobs, etc., has all gone like by the by. Now they will be panicking as to thinking, how can we now, if we're delaying the release, keep the lid on our prisons? Because prisoners who have been told, come the 2nd of September, you're out that gate, will now be turning around and saying, whoa, hang on a minute, I want my lawyer. I want to, I've been told it's in law, I only have to do 50% of my sentence, or 33%, whichever that category they fall into. But if I can just say, during the passage of the Sentencing Act, opposition MPs put forward amendments explicitly designed to block rapists, child groomers, sexual attackers from the 50% rule. And the political pushback on that was that the ruling government defeated those specific amendments only to maximise the prison spaces that were freed up. Who has a review of the prisons to make more prison spaces? Probably only us in the whole world, because that's exactly what the Gork review was for.
I'm very interested, Vanessa, in trying to discover. So the experts turn up, you're among them, and you talk to Timpson and whatever. He shows some interest in what you're saying, believes in what you're saying. What happens then? It gets passed to somebody else. You have to excuse me, I've got some terrible cough. And what happened? And how frustrated do you feel? There are you're running Wormwood Scrubs. How many employees do you have at Wormwood Scrubs? How many prison officers?
Well, officers-wise, about just under the 2,000. But then there's education, healthcare, various workshops, caterers, the whole shebang. So probably around 4,000.
So this is a big business. Forget about it. Whether it's where the money comes from. So when you turn up, you do know what you're talking about. Your colleagues who run similar sized businesses know what you're talking about, and yet you talk to a politician, and Conservative or Labour, it doesn't really matter. And they say, thank you very much for your input, very important, we'll take it aboard. And then, 2 months later, you start reading a story probably online, which says that they're going to do almost the complete opposite.
Well,
what happens? How do you feel?
Well, you feel absolutely like you've just completely lost half an hour of your life that you're never going to get back. It's almost laughing in the face, when you say that, you're running a 200-year-old prison that needs urgent investment to update the cells, to update the technology, blah, blah, blah. Here's a prime example. We were one of the first jails when I was at Scrubs to have digital radios, communications between staff. And the digital radios that we got were the ones that the police said were absolutely no good. Let's give it to the prison service. And that's exactly what they did. So it's always cutting corners in the prison service. Because look, if an MP turned around today and said, right, okay, let's invest, let's take the money that we're sending to Pakistan in aid, 153 billion, let's give that instead of going to Pakistan, who are refusing to take Pakistani nationals back, by the way. Let's give that to the prison service. Let's see what they can do with that. We'd all be rubbing our hands in glee, because there's an awful lot of money you can do with that. If they said, oh, well, we're going to take it from the National Health Service or net zero or whatever, people would be up in arms. Because the prison service is not a vote winner. No, every party, Kelvin, wants to be tough on crime. They don't want to talk about rehabilitation. They don't want to talk about, giving prisoners the best start they possibly can so that they don't reoffend. So instead, what we have is a load of prisoners being warehoused, no regimes, no rehabilitation, that we're letting back out into our communities to get back on the crime wheel and we'll see them in 6 weeks' time, if that.
Yes, I mean that's a very good point with these couple of pieces of scum who murdered two, I should say, murdered the PC Harper. I would have thought from their background, the chances of them going to take their place in the church choir were somewhat removed. Vanessa, very good to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time. And perhaps next time, the technology which seems to be causing mayhem in AI can possibly be corrected so that we can have a face-to-face. Thank you very much indeed, Vanessa.
Thanks, Kelvin.
So, I wonder whether we could go to the news. Not least of all, it's not particularly I'm interested in the news, but I'm interested in stopping coughing, actually. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Edward the News Hughes. 3 days into the Andy Burnham era, and the new Prime Minister is already discovering that bringing back hope comes with the usual paperwork. The Knob of the North has ordered an urgent review of the early release scheme after it emerged that 2 of the men involved in the death of PC Andrew Harper are suddenly eligible, prompting the usual chorus of "How on earth did this happen?" from police families and the public. Meanwhile, Safeguarding Minister Natalie Fleet has quit after just over 2 months, explaining that the job was overwhelmingly triggering and making her ill. Honest, if not exactly a ringing endorsement of the brief. On the brighter side, households can look forward to that less than £1 a week saving once VAT is scrapped from electricity bills in October. Paid for, conveniently, by binning the digital ID scheme. Same revolving door politics, slightly different northern accent. And the nation waits to see whether this government lasts longer than the average Premier League manager's honeymoon. Laters, Tigers.
So, Burnham, they go so quickly now. They're here, as Pooch says, they're all the same. So, the what's the way it's working is that Burnham believes that by drip feeding these minute amounts of money. After all, it was his government that imposed all these bills on us. And so he puts up the price of something by 130% and then announces today that pubs and everything will get 20% of that 130% back. It means nothing, absolutely nothing. And the way it's going to work out, they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it's all a slide. It reminds you, you probably don't play it, but at Westminster Bridge, anytime you like, it's find the lady, right, with the cards and everything, and they're all Albanians, and by the time you do all that, it's never there, Well, this is Burnham's approach, or I rather like what Mike Graham was saying. He now knows him as beep 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 because that's the bus going back into the garage. Beep 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 Burnham. That's a clever idea. Good old Mike. It's no wonder he has such good numbers, by the way. And it'd be helpful if you tell your friends about this show, because I could do with the numbers. Because if it carries on like this, then they'll probably just run the news. No, that's not true, actually. That's a gag. Right, coming up now. Right, Howard Cox. He's founder of, and we've talked before, Howard, I think, Fairfield UK. They've announced that they're going to cut electricity on VAT, and what does it actually mean for anybody? Look, you're the expert. You tell the viewers. What does it mean?
Well, I specialise mainly for the motorists, Kelvin, and good luck on your new show. I'm really pleased to see you on here. We have spoke several times. We've passed many a green room together. Yeah, it's all smoke and mirrors, mate. It's what it is. And, to cut 5% off the VAT, and it's just electricity, not gas. You must remember that one. That's an important one to say. And then claim they're going to pay for it by saving money on the digital ID programme, which hasn't had any money allocated to it. Again, it's smoke and mirrors. It's all grabbing headlines. I mean, bear in mind, household energy bills are up 13% to July anyway. So, and apparently we're going to get the VAT, the 5% cut in October the 1st. And I understand there's already a planned £50 increase in October. So what's going on here? We're going to get no bloody saving. It's complete and utter con.
Right. So this is what's emerging with this government. I mean, it's only been going for about 12 seconds, and actually, it's a constant robbing Peter to pay Paul. Oh, hold on a second. We'll rob Paul and give it back to Peter, and so it's the 3-card trick. There's less of the 3-card tricks, but as I just said just now, actually, if you want to have a 3-card trick, go onto Westminster Bridge and watch 20 quid disappear, and that is the reality, isn't it? Actually, thanks to the freezing of your tax thresholds, you are losing money every single day, and they're not talking about it, and they're doing things like this, as you importantly point out. It doesn't affect gas, and actually is worth 45 quid to you. Can I be honest with you? I don't care how skint you are. 45 quid is neither here nor there. That is the reality.
And you're right, Kelvin. They're ignoring the biggest problem of all. Is actually we're not self-sufficient on our energy. We're still buying most of our fuel from overseas, and we're looking at from a point of view of gas and electricity, we're looking at Norway as being the big brother to us. We're looking after us, and their economy is flourishing. And guess what? It's because they're self-sufficient. We need to do a long-term strategy, and there's two areas which I'm looking at, and one of them, of course, is electricity and gas, but the other one, of course, is for the motorists. We've never had a long-term road user strategy. We're still used as cash cows, all 42 million of us, as an easy way. You heard, I can't remember which minister it was that said it, but he said to me, how much more can we get squeezed out of people to pay for benefits? We're in this situation now where we have got so much debt. We're in this situation whereby we have to cut drastically. That means cutting the blob, and that means cutting quangos. All these things have got to go, and we've got to actually incentivize people to go back to work. And the whole thing about fuel duty, I've been successful for 16, 17 years in keeping fuel duty frozen. I'm quite proud of that. Even 2 budgets of Labour recently, I didn't expect that, but we won that with our campaigning and arguments. But the fact is, we are still the highest tax drivers in the world. So we've got a long way to go. Why is taxation and spending the only solution from a socialist government?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I've got a great long friend of mine, literally a 60-year friend, right, is Nick Ferrari, who does a great show on LBC. You know Nick, yep. You know Nick. Very, very decent cove. Pooch, can we play that? Can we play this clip?
When you say toiletries, what are we talking about there, Mr. Sterling?
It's toothpaste, it's shampoo, the sorts of things that we use.
Toothpaste?
Basic toiletries.
I mean, you know how much toothpaste costs, I assume, do you?
Are you sort of saying that these numbers aren't right? Are you saying that the study that's taken place the last 4.5 years...
Just essentials as does toothpaste is 45p. How much cheaper do you want it to be?
But if you're in debt, your income doesn't cover your outgoings, you have to not have something. I mean, that's what this research shows. So people are having to forego. The most basic reason why people are not in debt is because the cost of living is higher than the income they have.
Well, I've just told you can get toothpaste for 45p. A bar of soap at Asda costs you 35p, and I can get you 2 toothbrushes at the pound shop for £1. So we've had a nice wash and we brushed our teeth. Why don't we go out and get a job?
So, of course, many of these people are in work.
You're going to be able to afford 2 toothbrushes, aren't you, for £1 at the pound shop?
Not if your housing costs...
You're telling me people in this country can't afford a 50p toothbrush?
Yes.
Where? Who? Why?
7.4 million households.
7.4 million households in this country, Mr. Sterling, cannot afford a 50p toothbrush.
And that's precisely why I think it should be an emergency. And actually, the government is recognising that.
Right. So that guy is a shocking advert for whatever he believes in. He's basically sitting there making it all up. Everybody is skint. There is nobody, right, up to even, right, just short of Gary Lineker. Everybody else, including me, Pooch, everybody is absolutely brassic. And when we're interviewed in some survey, nobody is going to say, do you know what? I'm actually not doing too badly at the moment, but I can't say anything like that in public. So it's the best way of trying to get a break is going through it. I do accept. I'm vaguely connected with somebody who is big in, not big in, actually small in Citizens Advice, and they do meet some astonishing stories and some really mind-blowing aspects to life, often the basis of which appears to be relationships have broken up, and the father of the children has legged it, right, creating an enormous massive commercial financial problem in the household. I'm not saying people don't exist. What I do say is that 7.4 million of them don't exist, and actually they're all at it, and actually it's very much in their interest to say that they haven't got any money, because the state will come over the hills and help them out. And that's a very good point being made there by somebody online, basically saying, well, the mobile phone has to go. But actually, it's not that easy sometimes. All right, the smartphone may have to go, but actually not to have a phone is quite an interesting aspect to life. I mean, you know, there's no payphones anymore. If you mentioned a payphone to most people, I think they think they think you're as old as the person on here who referred to somebody being as handsome as Cary Grant, which has led to a lot of people wondering. Also, the television. Yeah, there's a whole load of reasons. Tell me something. If we didn't have tax on petrol, right? Supposing you've been completely successful, as from being enormously successful by actually putting the government to the sword and therefore, in a funny way, keeping the tax down, where would we get the money from?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there has to be a balance. That's why we need a long-term road user strategy. The last thing you do, you see, if you get to a situation whereby you're going to put up 5p, which, bear in mind, VAT is on the fuel duty as well, so it'd be 6p. They're planning to put it up in January the 1st. That, for an average family car, is not ridiculous. It's 55 litres times that, it's £3 or £4 extra. It's still something significant, but when you get to the situation when you've got a 400 litre, 44-ton truck that does 7 miles to the gallon, I'm afraid you're adding thousands to the cost of the delivery, and that is passed on down the impact on fuel duty. Now, where you get it from is all about, as I said before, we have to cut all aspects of, these massive increase in the blob in the last 10 years or more. I'm 71 years of life, and I've never known so much. I do lots of work talking to the Treasury and various other ministries to do with my campaigning. And every time I go in there seems to be new people, more people coming in all over the place. And they're all earning fat salaries with fat pensions. Now, what I'm saying is those sorts of issues we've got to be realistic about. And of course, your point about the 7 million people, which in terms of on benefits and we're looking after them, we have to be realistic. We've got to hurt a few people in the process. And yes, we might have to take away their smartphone. They've got to be realistic and have some priorities. And we've got to get rid of these bloody quangos, Kelvin. There's tons and tons of quangos that are paying, what the taxpayers paying for to get advice to give to dumb politicians, clueless politicians who can't even think. Now, Burnham's been sitting on, his hands for I don't know how long, for a couple of years, knowing that he's probably going to get this job. And he comes in on day one, day two, with stupid little headline miniature grabbing policies, which absolutely will mean nothing to anyone, rather than let's have the big one. Let's make the starting point of tax start at £20,000. That would encourage people to work, and that would put more money into people's pockets. And that's what we've got to do with cutting fuel duty as well.
What happens, Howard? I mean, you're familiar with the machinations of power, right? So I remember I went to see Jeremy Hunt once because he had there was some mad idea, right? So he's a Tory, he's made money, just goes to show making money is not associated, unless you're a Murdoch type figure, you can do it for 70 years. Making money with one investment is neither here nor there. We might all do that. I go and see him and I say to him, there is a mad idea either put forward by you or by your civil servants, and they're all sitting there all going, right? And I said to him, look, you want to have local television stations around the country, Birmingham, Manchester, Newcastle, Liverpool, wherever, Cardiff, right? I guarantee to you that is a commercial disaster. We aren't America. This is not Atlanta, Chicago, LA, New York, wherever. I said, there isn't any money for this. Don't give it the go-ahead. It's not going to work. It's going to blow up. Everybody's going to lose a load of money. Focus on some other mad idea. Just leave this world alone. So he thanked me so much. The civil servant thanked me so much for coming in. An important contribution to the debate. Bollocks, right? Anyway, what happens? Gives the go-ahead. What happened? They all go pop. Birmingham goes pop. I knew about this because I tried to do it, and the shareholders in the company I was working for lost a load of bloody money, right? I did all right. They paid me well, but the whole thing didn't work. So I knew. I was the expert in that room. I knew how much advertising was there. I knew what the audience looked like. Actually, it didn't work, period. I knew. 7 years later, the whole blinking lot collapses. Everybody loses a fortune. And Hunt moves on, and he eventually ends up as the Chancellor. I have never seen a more ridiculous kind of gravy train come escalator of people who don't know making decisions over people that do know. I had a lovely woman on there just now called Vanessa. She used to run Wormwood Scrubs. She goes in and says, don't do this. This is a problem. We have other priorities. The next thing is she gets told, we're doing it. Okay? This is a woman who runs Wormwood Scrubs. She has 2,000 employees and on a wider basis has 4,000, right, running the Scrubs. Huh? And she gets rejected. You go in and say X, Y, and Z. Are you treated courteously? Do they say an important contribution to the debate, Howard? Thank you so much for coming in, and help you on with your coat and kick you out the door. How does it all work?
Kelvin, you're cracking me up, mate. In fact, it's so close to home. I give you an example. I sat around a treasury table, one of these great big mahogany tables, huge, great thing. The table must worth 30,000 quid or something. But around the walls was these incredible works of art, which were probably the same sort of money. And on one side of the table was the minister and his various spads and his various advisors, civil service. And there's myself, and you probably remember Quinton Wilson, who was my partner. Sadly, rest in peace, he's not with us anymore. But we were there to talk about, this was about 5 or 6 years ago. And I was talking about, and I simply put this question to them: why do you tax diesel so much, the commercial heartbeat of the economy, so much? Because every other country in the world taxes diesel less than petrol.
Yeah.
Were you aware of that? And you know what? None of them on the other side were aware of that.
And did they, Howard, thank you for an important contribution to the debate?
No, I took my soggy biscuit and my cup of coffee with me out the door and said, bye. No, the point is, the way we go working campaigns to get people to contact their MP and bombard their MP.
Okay.
That's the way to do it. You're talking to these people, it's impossible because, as I say, there must have been 11 people on the other side of that table. 11. Yeah. I'm thinking on salary terms, they're probably on today's basis on an average of 50 grand each, let alone the ministers on 100,000, whatever. So you're looking at £500,000 worth of money on that side being paid for by the tax man. And there's little old me. I don't pay anything whatsoever to myself. Everything goes into this campaigning. Quinton Wilson did it for free. He became a good friend and a good spokesman for Fairfield UK. We were there for nothing on behalf of 40 million drivers and basically the economy. And I said the commercial heartbeat of the economy needs supporting. Therefore, that would stimulate growth if you cut, inflation.
I totally get that, Howard. I'm always the only joy I get from driving very slowly around the M25 is seeing how many vans and trucks there are, which are clearly the heartbeat of our economy, making their way around there. And if I see too many saloons and not enough vans and trucks, I bore the arse off my missus, who by the way, is now got a head firmly out the window, hoping he gets hit by a foreign truck because she's sick and tired of listening to my views on this. We need those people. So I'm very grateful for you, Howard, and was very grateful to Quinton, a great man, actually, a man I didn't, giving his time and his energy for no reward because he believed in it. Howard, good to speak to you. And let's hope we talk when the next time they decide that the answer to all this is we've thought about it deeply, and an important contribution from you, Howard. I want to thank you. And by the way, we have thrown it in the waste paper basket on the way out. And if you'd like to keep your views to yourself, I'd be very grateful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Kelvin. Take care, mate.
Cheers, and you. Cheers, Howard. Right, well, there we are. Good man. good man, fighting for, by the way, uniquely for no money. So he's not one of those guys you see outside Waterloo Station who is explaining how skint they are and have been sitting there to my certain knowledge for 10 years and then getting out, walking around the corner, climbing into their roller and going to their rather nice house in Highgate. That is a version that you don't hear very often. I tell you what I did see. I was on my way to Covent Garden, actually going to a rather nice restaurant, actually, endorsed by the Times, the Telegraph and the Mail on Sunday. So there we are. So if you don't like the idea that that people are enjoying themselves, then it's time to switch off. There was a soup kitchen there. And being of a cynical and rather churlish view of life, I decided to see how many people, indigenous people, were there and how many were minorities of one kind or another. I'll be pleased to report that the minorities were about 97%. So we're doing some good. Anyway, I am welcoming back into the studio Nicholas DeSanto. We had a good chat, didn't we, Nicholas? Right?
Hi, Kelvin.
You're looking well. Look as though you've had a haircut.
You too.
And well, I don't have a haircut. What happens with me is I do have it taken off, and I ask for it to be put into a envelope, and I get taken home, and I get it replaced by my wife. It's one of the hurdles of whether I marry people. Is are they good at sticking my hair back on my head? And as you can see, things are a bit challenged at the moment, but Leslie said that she's prepared to learn. So tell me, how are you feeling about the news of the day today? Is there anything which you found interesting? I tell you one line I saw a paragraph thrown away in the Times, which that they'd found a fridge, an Electrolux fridge from 1934, which was still working today. And what I found amazing was that average earnings, they said, per month in the 1930s was 154 quid. But this fridge would cost £49. So although there's a lot of complaints about everything going up in price all the time, actually, you can buy a decent fridge for almost, you're right, if you want to have a fridge freezer, that's different, but you want to have a decent fridge, you can get it for almost no money compared to these days. Anyway, a fascinating fact, which I can see, Nicholas, by the bored expression on your face.
Actually, I was thinking about it because, to be fair to the fridge industry, I think at that time...
that's an expression, to the fridge industry, an expression you don't hear on television very often. Yeah, go on.
I've been accused of a lot of things, among which being in the pocket of the big fridge lobby.
You're in the big fridge payroll here.
I know, because you got to pay the bills, right?
Yeah, you got to. Well, that's true, isn't it? I read a piece in the Guardian yesterday saying that literally they'd gone to a journalist. This is a lobby company run by the Australian guy who used to run for Boris, the Australian PR guy, and they basically had said to the journalist, we'll give you some money if you give us a bit of a puff, right? He said, but if you want a lot of money, you're going to have to only puff what we want you to puff. So you can be half a puff for 50 quid. But if you want 500, then basically you've got to be in our control. Anyway, the journo did them a double trick by exposing it in the Guardian. I thought it was good stuff. Tell me, what's getting at you at the moment? Nicholas.
I just wanted to finish my fish.
Yeah, okay, hold on a second. Turn out your pockets. He's in the...
Otherwise,
so you are in the grip.
I don't want to get into trouble with the big fridge. No, I want to say the prices were substantially higher at that time because it was relatively a modern equipment. Yeah. At that time. Nowadays, of course, kitchen utensils, or what is it called? White goods. Yes, these are.
Can I just ask you a question? Can I just ask you a question, Nicholas? Now, you seem to be drifting into an area which I am guessing you know absolutely bugger all about. You don't look like the kind of guy who spends his time wandering around utensil shops or create areas.
But I still remember my grandma's sturdy American fridges. You know, the ones that have actually made the comeback now as retro models.
Big fridge. You are in the big fridge.
Yeah, and I was well, I graduated in Italy from the town of Bologna, University of Bologna.
Oh right.
And nearby we have the fridge manufacturers.
Oh no,
Smeg, and those are one of the last fridge makers who make fridges actually in Italy, in Europe, and in Italy.
I can remember.
And those old style retro fridges have actually made the comeback, and nowadays are very expensive. Those are the fridges that you can go to a retailer in the UK and they're going to be much more expensive than the ones from China. The problem is that the affordable products that we buy, I'm trying to link it to the current affairs now, are all coming from China, which means we have, given up our industries, relying on manufactured products coming from China, and not only that has led to the post-industrialization and the decline of many of our industrial towns all over Europe, by the way, but also when we have geopolitical issues like the Red Sea and the closure of this strait or that strait, the prices can shot up.
Because stuff has to come mainly by sea because it's much cheaper, and therefore can't get there. Look, that is a good point. The Chinese dumping. That's what this is. And also the fact that you can go to the China government and say, look, I need some money in order to carry on producing these fridges, and therefore there's government sponsorship and all the rest of it.
And our manufacturers don't have that.
Correct. So what the hell are we going to do? Because we look like a dumped society, right? I agree with you. You go to Currys or whatever, who I see are actually doing rather well at the moment, and you go there and you look at the prices and you say about that fridge, you said, well, I can remember paying that 25 years ago. So these are significant issues for our country because of things like minimum pay and because of business taxes and because of council taxes. If you set up a manufacturing unit here, you'd be mad.
Absolutely.
Stark, raving mad.
You'll be competing with the like of the Chinese, and not just the Chinese. They don't have any environmental concerns. They don't have labor laws. They use child labor. You name it. Whereas we
do that. Now, this is a good idea. This is a good debate. Should we actually be saying, actually, go for your life, right? Employ whoever you like. We have got to either that or watch unemployment go through the roof, in which case we'll be paying out over there on benefits when we could have been paying out, when we could have been collecting money in another way. Is it possible, right? Of course, the liberal classes, they're all up in, oh, it's terrible. You're paying these kids at 18, you're paying them £6 an hour. But better to have work and get into the work experience, isn't it?
In a way. I mean, if you find that right balance, and this is an argument, when Trump started imposing all those tariffs, this was very controversial, right? Because, and I'm not one of the people who believe in absolute free markets, but many people who believe in absolute free markets said, well, this is against free market, obviously, because you are protecting the domestic manufacturer, but which means, yes, higher prices for the consumer, but look at the benefits. Then we have jobs for the Americans or for the British. We are not financing a labor market which is, again, employing kids, depleting the environment. I mean, this is mad. We are so obsessed with net zero and 15-minute cities and all those restrictions and the highest electricity bill in the Western world, while they're opening a coal plant in China every week or in India. So we need to find a balance. Maybe we don't need a mobile phone every 6 months. Maybe we don't need because like a T-shirt.
Well, that's a good point. You take this mobile phone. Right, a lot of it's manufactured outside the US anyway. This mobile phone now is, which was far too big, right? So I made a mistake, but I've had it 3 years. I use about 1.7% of its technical abilities, and I would hope to be able to keep that until I die, which is probably the way things are going here. It'd probably be next Wednesday. But seriously, I could keep it for 5-10 years. I'm never going to use it. This is what's happening in the mobile phone business, isn't it? People are just keeping them for as long as they keep a television or something like that. No?
Well, the problem is we have consumerism, and we have a market which is saturated. So especially with the kids, if you look at the advertisement and the way they, there's bullyism, there's competition with the Joneses. People think, especially young people, they think they're being left behind if they don't have the very absolute latest model.
Yeah.
And again, if you look at the clothing manufacturing, the clothing market, there's an ethical issue, because when I was a child, you couldn't buy a T-shirt for £1 or £3.
Yeah.
You would buy a bit more expensive, but you would keep it a bit much more longer, because the quality was better, and you didn't have to constantly validate yourself by new clothes and new looks.
Well, you
to
seem
put
to
on
continue
Instagram.
like that.
Yeah, this is from my childhood, actually. So the point is, we need. Eventually, at long last. So yes, maybe now Andy Burnham says he wants to take us back to the 1970s and the reindustrialization of Britain. It remains to be seen.
But he's mad. He's stark raving mad. But if you come from his part of the world, okay, perhaps the Northwest is different from the rest of us. I do not want to be like Oldham, and if you're watching from Oldham, you're on your own. I don't care. I'm trying to maintain the barriers around Weybridge. We like it like that. What we don't want to be, honestly, I've been to Oldham. I've been to a council block in Oldham, actually. It was shocking, beyond shocking. And the whole area seems so run down. I don't want that. But for some reason, Burnham wants to impose that idea on us. But why wouldn't he be saying we want to turn the whole nation into Weybridges? Why doesn't he say that? What is it that he has to bring us down? It's the same with public schools. I am in favour of schools getting better. Actually, there are signs with some head teachers that things are getting better. And well done for London, by the way, which seems to be on the right road. But instead of saying, well, that's what they get, but that's because they have privilege and all the rest of it, why do they have to crash that? Why don't they say, we're going to make this the new benchmark and we're all going to go up like that?
They want, sometimes, sadly, it looks like they want equality, but by bringing everybody down. Yeah. I think it was an Italian famous conservative journalist, Indro Montanelli. Years ago, he said, the left loves the poor so much that whenever they take power, they multiply them, right? So it is good if Britain can go back to having its own industries, strategic sectors, farming, because at one point, now he's talking about Thatcherism, right? At one point we thought, farming, let the Africans and the third world do the farming, let others do these dirty jobs. But then the war in Ukraine happens, or the problem with this strait or that strait happens, and we think, okay, we can actually have a food crisis if these ships don't get here.
Do you know, it's such a good point. So we apparently produce 60% of the food we eat. And having actually had a look at some of the people walking down the street, actually, if they reduce their food intake by 40%, that would be bloody helpful. But, and I also noticed, did you see that the young, especially young girls, young women, are getting fatter, causing diabetes to go through the roof, And I would have thought to themselves, actually, when you're young, all right, I can't help, I've been bigger than this, right? I've been bigger than this. I once got the Nick Ferrari Award for being fat, but but people don't seem to understand that actually eating is a cost as well. I mean, I just can't understand why. How can they claim they're being skint in one point, but then appear to be eating so much, which must cost them money?
One of my favorite comedians, he's Romanian but based in the UK. His name is Radu Isaac.
Okay, we should get him in. We'll get him in. Get him in with you.
Absolutely.
Get him in with you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Radu says, in my country, poor people are thin and rich people are fat. In your country, it's the other way around, because people eat obviously unhealthy, and cheap food is usually unhealthy. And of course, we also have the body positivity movement, because we're convincing people that being fat is all right, because every shape is a shape, so everybody is in shape.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to talk about it. It's considered rude. I'm very sorry about this, Nicholas. Right, next time you come in, I want you to come in breathing fire or breathing humour, right, about something, either a gag you've told while doing stand-up or something that really intensifies you. We'll have a longer chat. I like talking to you, man. You've got a great line coming out of it. And get your Romanian friend to come in as well, and we'll turn it into a three-way, and we'll just have a good laugh. Do you know the guy?
Of course, yes.
Oh yeah, fine. Okay, bring him in. Bring him in.
Thanks,
All right,
Kelvin.
guys. You okay?
We're sorted.
Okay, it's going to be sorted. There's the man of the moment, right? As you can see, he enjoys being bankrupt by starting UK Live. You know, he was a man of wealth till all this started, and now he's looking very pained. He's put on a few
It's
years.
a vocation, right?
It's a vocation. He wants to help the poor, right? As we all do. Actually, we are in a poor aversion society, PAS. Actually, I don't worry about the poor. I worry about wealth creation. That's all I care about. And everything will be fine as long as we create some money and some wealth. Okay? So some people get spectacularly wealth. How much would we like to have Elon Musk live here? How much would we like? Who wakes up every day with some mad scheme that you read in a Dan Dare comic or saw in some rather 1980s film. You thought that will never happen. What's happened? We can now what? We can fly to the moon on the back of a biro. Okay, I'll see you there. Right, we want madness. Things that were considered impossible are actually the norm. It's a fantastic world to be living in, and we've got to give our young the optimism to go forward and be successful. At the moment, what we've got is them all saying, I can't get a job, which I totally buy, right? And then looking to the government, right? Remember what Ronald Reagan said? He said, the phrase that you most want to worry about is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. They're not here to help, they're here to take, right? They can't fix anything, they can't create anything, they can just take your money. Just remember that. Okay, Nicholas, next time you're in, bring your Romanian mate with you. We'll have a good laugh. I like the fact that you've got work from the Big Fridge Association, the BFA. They're a good company. Yeah. I like what they do. I actually use them during the hot spells. I just climb inside the freezer aspect, and I come out in about 2 years' time. Nicholas, good to see you.
Well, thanks for having me,
Hope to see you. Well, next week, bring the Romanian. Pooch will organise it, and we'll sit there and tell our favourite political gags, and hope that none of them involve conservatism. Okay, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Right,
Thanks.
that's Nicholas DeSanto, stand-up comic, funny guy. He reveals that he's not doing very well in his stand-up, but the payment from the Big Fridge Association has turned out to balance the fact that he's skinned. Okay, now we've got coming on, and actually there is now nobody on this channel who has said one decent word about Burnham and Starmer. Right, this is for months on end. I wonder, actually, if you told a story in which Starmer emerged well or Burnham emerges well, people would think it was satire and it'd been made up. So we got Ben Pyle coming on, a climate and energy writer, and he's just about to pour a rather large bucket, I suspect. It's a guess, just a guess, Ben, just a guess, on a lady called Miata Fanbula. Now she has taken over from somebody else I suspect, I'm not sure about this, you didn't care for, called Ed Miliband. So she's now energy secretary, right? So literally she was pushing a broom around Peckham one moment. And today, this is a massively, massively important job. What on earth is she doing? And everything I've read about her says that she actually hates energy production. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I think what you were saying a few moments ago about wealth production is the key here, and it's something that I think's alien. It was alien to Ed Miliband, very, very obviously. I'm not a Ed Miller fan, as you maybe as you rightly predicted, but she comes from that milieu of people that have never done a moment's work in the productive economy. She's come from. She's been in Parliament for 2 years, just 2 years, and now she's got this incredibly important job, as you say. But before that, she was the chair or the director of something called the New Economics Foundation, which is most people you'd be forgiven for not knowing what that is, but it's this rather radical, vaguely leftoid, I call it, think tank that produces all these economic ideas that are basically, as far as I can tell, organised around the idea of abolishing arithmetic and abolishing physics. So, she's got a PhD.
Now that's a great idea, Ben.
Well, I call them no foundation economics. Because they do come up with these ideas about, well, what if you just abolished all debt? What if you gave everyone £100 an hour? What if all these sort of crazy ideas? And I suppose there's a place in the world for people to think really far outside the box. As you're saying, like a bit as a parallel to Elon Musk. Elon Musk says, well, what if we could get to the moon on a pencil? And then there are these people who have these sort of wacky economic ideas, and maybe they should be able to spin those out somehow, but they shouldn't be anywhere near SW1A. Right, they should be nowhere near the levers of power, but that's what happened. And just to sort of add to her CV slightly, before she was at the New Economics Foundation, she was a director of research or some similar position at the Institute for Public Policy Research, which is another very influential think tank which pushes all of these crazy ideas on behalf of their grantors into Westminster, into Parliament. And over the last 20 or 30, maybe 40 years, this has sort of really put a wedge between Parliament, MPs, and the public. So all they get is this rubbish produced by these bizarre people with their crazy ideas, rather than a sort of a grounding in what really needs to happen, what really is the situation on the street. That she might be sort of hanging around in Peckham, but I think it's a Peckham of a very different kind than the one that there was 20 or 30 years ago. It's probably hanging around very much in her own circles with other sort of people that Labour now represents, i.e. not the working class, but the sort of middle class public sector kind of environment where everyone has these same ideas, and they're not working again in the commercial or wealth producing sectors. They're working in sort of social services and in universities, and so on and so forth. And so they're very much the lanyard class, I guess you could call it. So these ideas have sort of come to dominate in Westminster and in those think tanks without any kind of test in reality. No one's ever put it to the public. For example, the question: do we want to do net zero at all costs? And that was famously, one of her. Well, I say famously, she was obscure before she stepped into Ed Miliband's shoes. She wanted to bring net zero in by 2035 or thereabouts, a bit like what the Extinction Rebellion mob wanted to do when they turned up. And I think even Labour wanted to do that. I think at one of the Labour Party conferences, they voted for net zero by 2035. And even then, most of the Labour sort of top brass, as it were able to recognise that this was a short step towards what was probably going to be civil war. If you start taking away everyone's boilers now, if you start taking away everyone's cars now, then it's not going. It's not going to be an election that's going to change the government. It's going to be a revolution. So these people have these pie in the sky ideas about how we're going to live, and all we've seen since Ed Miliband was first had the energy brief is policy failure after policy failure after policy failure, and politicians just simply refusing to pick up on that, and instead saying that what we need is more poison as remedy to the problems that the policies have created. So the only good thing I can say about this is that someone with only 2 years experience in Parliament probably doesn't have the heft that Ed Miliband does. So we've got the green blob very much implanted in the Department of Energy and Net Zero, very close to policy making. But she's not as able. She's not going to be as able to push in cabinet for that green blob work, and she's going to have a bit more of a fight on her hands, I think. For example, with John Healey, if he's true to his word, which is a very big question mark, and he sort of, for example, designates more money for defence as he promised, and the other things that Andy Burnham has promised, like paying subsidising everyone's bus fare. So there are going to be these competing priorities. She's going to have less muscle to get her way, and so I think there's a new reality dawning over all this.
So what I can't understand, I mean, I don't. My interaction with government has been quite reduced. They certainly don't want to meet a dick like me, right? So I can quite understand that. But what I can't understand is, why do they allow people with vested political interest such access to the top of to an important commercial operation like energy, right? Which affects us all. We all have to buy the damn stuff, right? Why do they say, actually, you, Miata, how you pronounce her name, Miata, please come in and come up with your crackpot ideas? We'd be delighted. And I imagine there are a whole phalanx of these people dominating the diaries. Why don't they just say, we're not listening to anybody for the next few years, we're skint, we're going to focus entirely on our own knitting, we're going to reduce costs, and then if anything is going to cost us money, we'll come and look at that in about 3 years' time? Why don't they actually say what the reality is of most people's households?
I think that we have to go back, unfortunately, a really long way to start to understand this problem.
Yeah.
And if we remember, the Climate Change Act was passed nearly 20 years ago, 2008. And because it involves civil infrastructure and how the aging infrastructure is when it retires is replaced, the consequences of the policies that were made, and the politics indeed that were made at the turn of the century, are only now bearing fruit. And the problem is, back 20 years ago, MPs decided pretty much it was none of their business and it was none of our business. Gaia had spoken, and unless we did what she said, we were going to suffer her revenge in terrible storms, droughts and floods and plagues and pestilence and whatnot. So they all decided, and it was a concrete consensus in Westminster. Anne Widdecombe, RIP, was one of only 5 MPs at the time of the Climate Change Act to sort of vote against its final reading, and that gives an idea of how united Parliament was to destroy British industry and the economy. And I don't use those words lightly. That was the necessary implication of what they were doing, if you cared to dig into what the proposition was. And it's not a coincidence that since 2008, per capita GDP in Britain has been pretty much stagnant. The Green lobby did a very, very good job of completely surrounding MPs in Westminster, of mobilising the public to give a very small amount of the public, as it happened. Only about 100,000 people wrote to their MPs saying they wanted a Climate Change Act. But they did an enormous, I mean, they have spent billions of pounds on engineering this. And it created the impression that there was public demand for it. They created the impression that there was no scientific questions to answer, and created a mythology about what it would look like when we finally achieve net zero, or at least radical emissions cuts. So they surrounded, and we've talked a lot about the Labour Party, but we shouldn't imagine for a second that the Conservative Party, up until the stewardship of Kemi Badenoch, was very far away from the
that is true, by the way. That is absolutely true. Theresa May was at the forefront of the damn thing, right? And her chief of staff, who now does pretty good work actually as an MP and as a shadow minister, he endorsed it all. You're quite right. We have had a collective political view that the only way forward, actually is actually decarbonisation in its very forms, and actually taking up huge amounts of farmland, which seem to be very useful to maintain our 60% position on food production, which is needed for this country. And nobody said a damn word about anything. I got caught up in the thing, right? It was cleverly done, man. It was cleverly done. Look, Ben, I'm sorry, I've got to let you go. We could have carried on talking. I hope we do carry on talking. It's always, it's the better thing. Honestly, we've been pouring such a bucket on the Burnham government. It's only been going through days. I can't imagine what this is all going to look like in about 6 months' time. He'll get the bounce, and then it will start on the down. I'm afraid socialism is not the answer for where we find ourselves. Ben, very good to speak to you. You're a great advocate for your side of the argument. Thank you very much indeed. Righto, guys. Well, that's it for today. Thank you very much indeed. I'm back tomorrow. I actually thought that given that if we'd allowed Nicholas to tell a few more, they're not exactly gags, but he's a quick-witted guy, and apparently he's got some very clever Romanian guy that's going to come in. We want people to feel happier at the end rather than go out and shoot themselves. But things don't look good at the moment, and the idea that Weybridge is going to turn into Oldham has ramifications for me of a quite uncomfortable commercial kind. So I'll be campaigning on that. So I'll see you tomorrow. I see that somebody has just said another brilliant show, team. Now, I don't like the word team, right? I know there's no I in team, but in this case, there is one I. It's me flogging yourself to death. Hello. Like the gags? Okay. Well, that's very nice. Thank you very much, Mary. And if you could just tell your friends and they'd like to send me some money, that would be helpful. I'm moving. One more and another one here. Stop stuffing your gob with Mars bars and walkers, and you might afford a fecking toothbrush, you feckless inbreed. Well, thanks very much indeed. I'm not sure who that was aimed at, but that was the 45. That was a great piece. Nick Ferrari is a brilliant interviewer. When and the ones I like best is when they get cabinet ministers on there and he says things like, yes, tell me, Prime Minister, how much is a pint of milk? And anyway, beep, 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 Burnham. Yeah, I like that one. A great line from Mike Graham. Mike Graham on from 7, me on from 10. I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.